Chapter 368. Shio. As Noah expanded his sensing ability, the faint sound of something breaking through the air suddenly became sharp. Hearing the sound of something breaking through the air, Noah's first thought was, "There's an attack." However, this attack was clearly not directed at Noah. Otherwise, Noah's sensitivity towards danger would not have allowed him to not sense it until now. Furthermore, the attack did not come in Noah's direction. Instead, it came from quite a distance away. It was because of this that Noah was a little slow to react. However, even though he was slow to react, Noah's heart still had a bad premonition. Coupled with the feedback from his sensing ability, Noah's heart trembled. He quickly turned around and looked at the end of the street. Over there, the guild building belonging to Fairy Tale stood tall under the moonlight. Around the Fairy Tale Guild building, iron rods that were thicker than pillars cut through the air. They flashed through the night sky and landed on top of the guild building with a sharp whistling sound. Peng 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 peng. Amidst a series of dull thuds, the thick iron rods from all directions smashed into the Fairy Tale Guild building and stabbed into it, causing pieces of wood to shatter and fall to the ground with a crackling sound. It was only a matter of a moment. In that moment, the guild that was established during the era of the first guild leader of Fairy Tale, under the attack of the iron rods, turned into ruins. Kacha, the guild sign with the words Fairy Tale on it cracked open with a crisp sound. It was as if it had been smashed, and half of it was shattered. About 200 to 300 meters away from the guild building of Fairy Tale, Noah watched all of this happen with a buzzing sound in his head. His mind went blank. Was it destroyed? Fairy Tale was destroyed? Everyone's guild was destroyed? His home was destroyed just like that? Liar. Beside Noah, Mira, who also saw all of this with her own eyes, covered her mouth. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, and even her delicate body was trembling. Our guild, due to the distance, Fairy Tale's guild building was only the size of a palm in the eyes of Noah and Mira. However, this palm-sized guild building was turned into a dilapidated building in an instant. Mira could clearly see the thick iron rods that were inserted into the palm-sized guild. Although there was no way to confirm the exact damage of the guild building, but looking at the shape of a hedgehog, it was most likely that the guild building was already full of holes. Pung! Just as Mira was staring blankly at everything, there was an explosion beside her. A burst of magic power that was as violent as a hurricane suddenly surged out like a wave of stormy wind. Mira was startled awake and instinctively looked at her surroundings. She saw that Noah, who was carrying Lisanna on his back, had his head lowered. A terrifying magic storm expanded from his body like a volcanic eruption and spread in all directions. It seemed to be deliberately avoiding Mira and Lisanna, bypassing the two girls and spreading in all directions. That magic was so terrifying that even Myra's heart violently shrank. Of course, this was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that, along with the monstrous magic, there was also a terrifying aura that even Laxus could only look at from behind, and a murderous aura that could frighten ordinary people out of their wits. Slowly raising his head, Noah's dark eyes were filled with unprecedented rage, but his face was still calm. He controlled his magic, aura, and murderous aura, not letting them affect Mira and Lisanna. Then, he handed the sleeping Lisanna to Mira. "Take good care of Lisanna." After saying that, Noah turned around. Behind him, a blue flame suddenly appeared out of nowhere and turned into two pairs of pitch-black wings that equipped Noah's back. Whoosh! In the next second, the magician in the form of the Death Feather on Noah's back spewed out a large amount of black light, which turned into a substantial propulsive force, causing Noah's figure to soar into the sky. With a turn, he rushed towards the direction of the guild like a stream of light. Mira finally reacted. She hugged the sleeping Lisanna and looked at Noah, who had turned into a streak of light and shot in the direction of the guild. After a long while, she said those words. "Be careful." Against the strong wind, Noah used the fastest speed of a magician in the Death Feather form to reduce the distance of 200 to 300 meters to zero in just 1 or 2 seconds. Floating in the air, Noah looked down at the guild building that had been destroyed by thick iron rods, the fury in his heart surging violently. To the guild members of Fairy Tale, the importance of the guild building was obvious. To Noah, it was not only the guild building, but also the place where he lived. It was his home. His home was destroyed. This fact directly threw Noah's ability to control his emotions, which he was best at, out of the window. He gave his body to the uncontrollable anger to drive him. Even so, the angrier he was, the clearer Noah's mind became, and his thoughts became sharper. In this situation, he only needed to think a little to understand what was going on. Someone was deliberately attacking the guild. With that thought in mind, Noah's gaze shot in a certain direction as if he had sensed something. There, in a small alley, a small dot was gradually becoming smaller at an astonishing speed. That dot was a person. Noah's eyes emitted a frightening cold light. Gotcha! Behind Noah, the death feather form of the magician shook, and with a mechanical sound, it split into a wing-like fragment and floated beside Noah. Wang! Bursts of energy like rays of light converged at the tip of the wing-like black fragment, and it rotated like a black hole. Not long after, it converged into a pitch-black ball of light. Bang! In the next second, the pitch-black ball of light directly exploded, turning into a beam of light, cutting through the sky like a meteor, flashing through the night sky, and falling on the body of the gradually fading black dot. Bang! Accompanied by the dull sound of the explosion, a burst of thick smoke and fire like a whirlpool covered the location of the black dot, setting off a violent storm that blew in all directions, shattering the walls of the buildings around the alley. Looking at the place covered by the thick smoke and fire in the distance, Noah waved his hand, and the wing-like black fragment floating beside him moved back and forth, and reassembled on the death feather form of the magician. Immediately, controlling the magician behind him, Noah bent down and flew away. In an empty alley, an open space seemed to have been hit by a meteorite, exposing a medium-sized pit to the air. The inside was charred black, and there were wisps of light smoke rising. Gravel rolled in the pit, and the two walls around the pit were also shattered by the shock waves. People who didn't know would definitely think that there were two sorcerers fighting here, and this was not rare in this continent where magic prevailed. At a certain moment, in the sky, the sound of a thruster engine reverberated, and a stream of light flew from the distance, arriving above the pit. Looking down at the pit below, Noah slowly descended from the sky and landed next to the pit. Looking around, there were no signs of life in the area covered by his sensing ability. Noah's face was calm, and he walked into the pit. He came to a corner of the pit that was still emitting wisps of light smoke, and looked at the ground there. There was a tattered piece of cloth depicting a certain coat of arms. It was the coat of arms of a certain guild. Picking up the tattered cloth from the ground, Noah stared at the coat of arms on the ground, and in his eyes, a bone-chilling cold light flashed. Phantom Lord. Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Chapter 369. When the sun rose once again, all the guild members gathered in front of the entrance of Fairy Tale, which had been battered black and blue by a thick iron rod. Looking at the miserable state of the guild in front of them, they couldn't help but avert their gazes. At the front of all the guild members, Makarov closed his eyes tightly. His expression was calm, but the hand that was holding the cane was trembling at an imperceptible frequency. It was obvious that his heart was extremely unsettled. Bang! In the crowd, Nazi clenched his fist and slammed it on the ground, creating a fist-sized hole in the ground. His face was filled with uncontrollable rage. Phantom Lord. Nazi's roar reverberated in the air, causing many people to be enraged as they clenched their fists tightly. Perhaps, many people were like Naz, roaring the name of the guild that hoped to be cut into pieces thousands of times in their hearts. This is too much. Lisanna hugged Mira tightly as if she didn't want to see the miserable state of the guild. She buried her head in Myra's arms. How can they do this? Mira hugged Lisanna back and gently patted her head. Her usually gentle face was also filled with sadness. It was obvious that she felt extremely uncomfortable in her heart. Even Alusha, Lucy, Gray, Elfman, Karna, Lebby, Hubby, and the others lowered their heads in silence. They couldn't bear to see the miserable state of the guild and kept silent. Fairy Tale and Phantom Lord didn't have a good relationship to begin with. This was something that even outsiders knew. This was because in the current Fiori Kingdom, if one were to say which guild was the strongest, people would either say Fairy Tale or Phantom Lord. The two had always been competing for the position of the strongest guild, and neither was willing to submit to the other. Of course, Fairy Tale was simply unwilling to submit to Phantom Lord. However, Phantom Lord was extremely hostile towards Fairy Tale. Compared to Fairy Tale, Phantom Lord not only had a longer history, but also had many branches under his command. It could be said that they had the most members of any guild in the Fiori Kingdom. In Phantom Lord's view, Fairy Tale was not only a new guild, but also had a small number of members. They didn't even have a branch, so how could they compete with them for the position of the strongest guild? But it was undeniable that although Fairy Tale had a small number of members, they had a lot of strong players. Kildas, Laxas, Mishgang, Elusha. Any one of these people had the ability to destroy all of the Phantom Lord's branches. Under such circumstances, who would dare to say that Fairy Tale was weak? It was also because of this that Phantom Lord, who was jealous of Fairy Tale for having too many strong players, was so hostile towards Fairy Tale. In addition, Makarov had once fought with Phantom Lord's guild leader and won. Since then, Phantom Lord had been looking for trouble with Fairy Tale. This could be seen from the fact that Noah had been attacked by Phantom Lord when he was young. However, no one would have thought that the Phantom Lord would directly attack the Fairy Tale's guild building. It must be known that the council had explicitly stated that guilds were not allowed to fight privately. Otherwise, the punishment would be light and the guild could even be disbanded. As such, who would have thought that the Phantom Lord would still dare to attack the guild? Even Noah could only watch helplessly as his guild was destroyed because he had not thought of it, right? Sigh. After an unknown amount of time, Makarov finally sighed and his tone returned to normal. Immediately get someone to repair the guild. Before the guild is repaired, everyone should clear out the underground warehouse and use it as a temporary workplace. What about Phantom Lord? The hot-headed Naz shouted without hesitation. Let's go and wipe them out. Naz. Makarov's expression did not change and he still sighed. This matter ends here. None of you are allowed to privately seek revenge. What? This time, not only Naz, but everyone else in the guild exclaimed. Guild Master. Elusha stepped forward and looked straight at Makarov. You mean, we're just going to let it go? Impossible. Without waiting for Makarov to answer, Naz roared. If I don't send those fellows flying, I will definitely not give up. Naz. Hubby called out with some worry. Calm down, Naz. Lucy also spoke quickly, but there was also a trace of sadness in her eyes. This is the guild master's order. I don't care. Naz, whose heart was filled with anger, said bluntly. If none of you are going, then I'll go. Calm down. Stinky fire. Gray couldn't stand it anymore. Do you know what you're talking about? Do you want to violate the guild master's decision? Naz seemed to want to say something, but he was stopped by Elusha. After taking a deep breath, Elusha regained her composure. If this is the guild master's decision, then we all have to abide by it. Naz, you should understand what I will do if you mess around, right? The veins on Naz's head bulged, and in the end, he could only growl sullenly. Damn it. Under Naz's unwilling growl, many people closed their eyes sadly. Who would be willing? But Makarov's decision was right. After all, private conflicts between guilds were prohibited. In order to protect the guild, they could only swallow this anger into their stomachs. Of course, it was also because there was no one in the destroyed guild. If someone was injured, Makarov would never tolerate it. If the building was destroyed, then Makarov's decision was destined to be only one. Endure. However, even if Makarov could endure it, it didn't mean that others could. Noah, who had been quietly watching this scene from the corner, suddenly turned around and walked in another direction. Brother Noah? Lisanna, who was closest to Noah, noticed this and quickly called out. Where are you going? With one sentence, everyone's gaze was attracted to Noah. Noah. Mira, who felt a bad premonition, also spoke. Don't be impulsive. Noah. At the front of the crowd, Makarov shouted without turning his head. Come back here. Noah stopped in his tracks and turned around. His face was as calm as the calm before the storm. It was a face that struck fear in others. I'm sorry, Grandpa. To you, this is just a guild being destroyed, but to me, it's my home being destroyed. Since that's the case, it's normal for me to go and ask for some compensation. Besides, if I go alone, it won't be considered a conflict between guilds, right? What do you mean? Makarov was startled and turned around abruptly. You want to challenge a guild by yourself? Hearing this, Noah laughed. His laugh was unusually cold. Noah turned around and left only one sentence. One person is enough. With that, Noah strode forward and disappeared at the end of the street. Seeing this, Makarov sighed again. Mira and Lisanna looked at each other and placed their hands in front of their chest, as if praying for Noah's safety. Chapter 370. This was a hall located at the top of a magnificent building. At the very front of the hall, there was a throne-like seat. A middle-aged man wearing a sorcerer's hat and looking very similar to a sorcerer was sitting on it, looking down. His sinister face was slightly gloomy at this moment, and he did not look very good. And in the hall, 5 people were standing side by side. No. It should be said that there were 4 people standing side by side, and the remaining person was kneeling on the ground with one knee. His whole body was in tatters, and one of his hands seemed to have been burned. His whole body was charred black, and blood was dripping out. It seemed that his injury was not light. If there was someone in the know here, they would definitely be able to recognize the identity of the people here. Sitting on the throne-like seat was the president of the Phantom Lord, like Makarov, who also had the title of one of the 10 Saint Archmages, Joseph Bala. And standing side by side in the hall were the 4 S-rank Archmages of a Phantom Lord, who had the title of 4 Elements Aliyah, Julian, Saul, and Bun Bun Ball. As for the one kneeling on the ground with his hands still dripping with blood, it was the existence of a Phantom Lord, who was known as the strongest Archmage Gadula Late Fox. However, this existence known as Phantom Lord, who was known as the strongest Archmage, didn't seem to be in a very good condition. This was also the main reason why the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, Joseph, had such an ugly expression on his face. You said that after you attacked Fairy Tale last night, someone attacked you? That's right. Gadula's expression was also unsightly. His eyes were filled with savagery, and there was even a wild rage surging in them. At that time, I had already started to withdraw, but I was suddenly attacked. If I hadn't noticed the strange smell in the air and dodged in advance, now, I wouldn't be as simple as just being injured. You're saying that not only does someone in a fairy tale have the ability to injure you like this, but they can also attack you without you noticing? Joseph said in a low voice. Who is it? Laxas? Mishgang? Or that fairy queen Elusha? It shouldn't be that Kildas who travels all year round, right? Could it be Makarov himself? Joseph could only think of these people. After all, Joseph knew of Gadula's strength. In the fairy tale, there was absolutely no one else who could silently injure Gadula like this with a single attack. Joseph was very confident of this point. After all, as a guild that had always been hostile towards him, any information regarding fairy tale was of utmost importance to Joseph. Therefore, Joseph was confident that unless it wasn't someone from fairy tale, only the existences he could think of could hurt Gadulu in one strike. Unfortunately, Joseph made a mistake this time. After 4 years of hard work and 2 years of traveling, Noah had long faded out of the sight of the people who paid attention to fairy tale. His fame was lower than Naz, Gray, and the others, so it was naturally impossible for him to enter Joseph's eyes. Sad, really sad. Aliyah's voice was sobbing as if she could cry at any time. I really feel sad for Mr. Gadulu. Julian doesn't think it's President Makarov. Julian, who was holding an umbrella, said with a somewhat melancholy expression. If that person personally attacked, Mr. Gadgeloo would definitely be able to detect it. That's true. Bunny Ball, who had a sword at his waist like a warrior, said in a deep voice. I heard that Makarov's magic is the type that makes a lot of noise. If he attacked Mr. Gadgeloo would definitely be able to detect it. No. 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 Thor, who was dressed like a gentleman, said with a smile while twisting his body like a clown. Then it's Lax's, Mishgang, or Elusha, right? Is that right? Hearing the words of the four elements, Gadgeloo raised his eyes filled with ruthlessness and coldly looked around. Shut up. Hearing that, whether it was Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, or Thor, they all obediently shut their mouths. Obviously, even the four elements were afraid of Gadgeloo. You're so long-winded. If I knew who it was, would I still need to stand with you with such an ugly appearance? Gadgeloo spat out a mouthful of saliva and said bitterly. Remember, don't let me know who you are. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present sensed it. The ground, just now, shook. Bang! Immediately after, an explosive sound reverberated from below and entered the ears of everyone present. Joseph narrowed his eyes and smiled. Could it be that Fairy Tale is here? Oh. Gadgeloo giggled, and that smile was extremely cruel. I thought it would take more effort to lure them here, but I didn't expect it to be so easy. Sure enough, Fairy Tale is only at this level. Hearing Gadgeloo's words, the four magic shooters of the four elements looked at each other. At this point, it was easy to guess what was going on. It felt like the Phantom Lord's attack on Fairy Tale was all planned out, and it wasn't because of a momentary conflict. If Makarov really attacked, it would save me a lot of trouble. Joseph smiled gloomily. But before that, let's make sure. Saying this, Joseph stood up and looked down at the 5 people below. I'll leave this place to you guys. If it's just the people from Fairy Tale, then cripple them all. Just remember not to kill them. If Makarov is also here, then we'll proceed according to plan. Yes. Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul all responded at the same time. As for Mr. Gadgeloo, Joseph frowned. Since you're all injured, why don't you take a rest? Injured? Gadgeloo laughed, and his laughter was unusually irritable. This kind of injury, as long as I'm full, I'll be able to recover in no time. Is that so? Joseph smiled with satisfaction. Then I'll leave it to you. Leaving this sentence, Joseph's figure turned into a black shadow and disappeared into the air. Compared to a Fairy Tale, the building of a Phantom Lord was a bit gloomy and gloomy. At first glance, one could tell that it wasn't a place suitable for people with cheerful personalities. Here, a bunch of delinquent youths and hoodlums were gathered together, eating and drinking to their heart's content. From time to time, they would let out angry curses, causing the entire Phantom Lord to be in an uproar. However, the noise here was different from that in Fairy Tale. If the noises of Fairy Tale belonged to the daily quarrel between friends, then the noises of Phantom Lord were the kind of chaos where a group of hooligans gathered together, making people flinch at the sight of it. Just as the magic shooters in Phantom Lord were making noise, suddenly, the ground shook slightly. Bang dash. In the next second, the door of the Phantom Lord exploded, turning into fragments that shot out in all directions like bullets. What's wrong? What's going on? The magic shooters in Phantom Lord stood up in fright and looked toward the door. There, a figure slowly appeared. Chapter 371. Who? Without any hesitation, the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord all grabbed their weapons and stood up, looking fiercely in the direction of the door. As long as one was not a fool, they would definitely be able to guess what had happened in the first instance. Someone is here to pick a fight. Under the watchful gazes of the magic shooters, Noah passed through the smoke and flames caused by the explosion of the door and appeared in the eyes of all the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord. He raised his head and swept his torch-like eyes forward. The group of Phantom Lord magic shooters saw Noah appear at the door. At first, they were startled, then they looked at each other and laughed out loud. What, so it's a little brat? Why is this little brat here? Could it be that he's lost? Kid, do you need us to take you to find your mother? Ahahaha. Without exception, all the sorcerers who belonged to the Phantom Lord chose to ridicule him at this moment. In the eyes of these magic shooters, a person like Noah who was not even 20 years old, even if he was a magic shooter, was just a little brat. Since he dared to come to the Phantom Lord, to pick a fight, one could imagine what would happen to him later. Of course, the most important thing was not because Noah was relatively young, but because Noah was only one person. Otherwise, these magic shooters who knew their own worth would definitely not have the guts to laugh at someone who dared to come to the Phantom Lord, to pick a fight. In the face of the mockery from the Phantom Lord's magic shooters, Noah's expression remained unchanged, but the look in his eyes became slightly disdainful, and there was also some indignation and anger in his eyes. Are all the magic shooters of Phantom Lord, such magic shooters of Phantom Lord, such magic shooters? Was the guild that had hidden so many small fries to cause trouble for Fairy Tale? They didn't even have a single person with good eyesight. How could these guys compete with Fairy Tale for the title of the strongest guild? And on what basis did he dare to make a move against Fairy Tale? Driven by this thought, Noah's face became colder and colder. He ignored the mockery of the Phantom Lord and spoke indifferently. Tell Joseph to get out here. With that one sentence, the mocking laughter that echoed throughout the entire Phantom Lord guild came to an abrupt halt. A man walked out of the crowd and stood in front of all the Phantom Lord archmages. He seemed to be the most prestigious person among the archmages present. He represented the entire Phantom Lord and looked coldly at Noah. You little brat, you dare to call our president by his name? Don't even think about leaving here today. Hearing this, Noah was about to say something, but when he saw the speaker coming out of the crowd, he was slightly startled. Then, a light flashed in his eyes. Noah knew this person. Although he had only met him once when he was young, Noah had a very deep impression of him. Because this person in front of him had left a hideous scar on Noah's hand that was enough to last a lifetime. It was Moglia who had led the Phantom Lord branch archmages to intercept Noah, Elusha, and Laxus during the Ritual Lake mission. He had attacked Noah's group and left a hideous scar on Noah's hand. After 7 years, the archmage who had seen the potential of Noah, Elusha, and Laxus and who had wanted to eradicate the future pillar of Fairy Tale by hook or by crook had finally appeared in front of Noah once again. As soon as he saw Moglia's face, which was relatively older and colder than 7 years ago, Noah smiled. His smile was unusually excited. Oh, isn't this Mr. Moglia who was easily defeated by Laxus, who was also a little brat? Moglia's cold face suddenly stiffened, and then became ferocious. Who are you? How do you know about this? Speak. Moglia yelled at the top of his lungs. Back then, the matter of Laxus being able to resolve it so cleanly had always been a thick thorn in Moglia's heart. That was to be expected. Moglia was very conceited. When they first met, he had obviously looked down on Noah, Elusha, and Laxus's group. However, because of the commission, he had lost a lot of face. That was still nothing. The key was that under such circumstances, Moglia had led people to block Noah's group. In the end, not only had he been stimulated by the talent and potential of Noah and Elusha, but he had also been easily defeated by Laxus. This made the conceited Moglia go crazy countless times after the incident. However, what could Moglia do? As time passed, Laxus, who had easily defeated Moglia, became an S-rank magic shooter. His strength improved rapidly. Elusha also began to show her talent and received the title of Fairy Queen. Her reputation shook the entire Fiori kingdom. Compared to Elusha and Laxus, Moglia was already more than 40 years old 7 years ago. His potential had long been exhausted. In these 7 years, his strength could only be described as the speed of a turtle compared to Elusha and Laxus. Until now, he had not reached the level of an S-rank magic shooter. How would Moglia dare to seek revenge? He could only bear this grudge and swallow this resentment in his heart. However, after 7 years, this humiliation that almost made Moglia go crazy was once again mentioned. How could Moglia not fly into a rage? Mr. Moglia is really forgetful. Facing Moglia's rage, Noah only sneered. He raised his hand, rolled up his sleeves, and showed his bandaged hand to Moglia. Don't tell me you forgot that in order to protect Alusha, you left a scar on my hand. Alusha? Fairy Queen? Moglia was suddenly shocked, and then his eyes widened. So it's you. In this life, Moglia and Alusha only met once when they were young. In addition, Noah also mentioned Laxas and the matter of protecting Alusha. How could Moglia not think of Noah? One must know that in the past, Noah, who did not know magic, also fiercely punched Moglia's face. That humiliation was not one bit less than being cleanly dealt with by Laxas. Stinking brat. Looking at Noah's face full of ridicule, Moglia's hidden scar in his heart was finally completely opened, causing Moglia to madly roar. I'll kill you. After saying this, Moglia's entire body exploded with a burst of extremely violent and frightening lightning. His body turned into a bolt of lightning, and like a bolt of lightning, he rushed in the direction of Noah, and violently shot in front of Noah. Go to hell. In the midst of the angry roar, Moglia raised his fist, which was surrounded by lightning, against the hot air, and mercilessly swung it at Noah's head amidst the sharp sound of the air breaking. If this punch really hit, then even if it was a magic shooter with decent strength, his head would directly explode, and he would die on the spot. Obviously, Moglia did not have the slightest intention of showing mercy. Once he made a move, it was a sure kill blow, and he wanted to kill Noah. Unfortunately, Moglia was destined to live in tragedy for the rest of his life. Starting from 7 years ago when he chose to surround Noah and his group. Hence, before Moglia could see the scene of Noah's head exploding from his punch, a hand suddenly appeared in front of him, passed through the layers of lightning on Moglia's body, and landed a punch on Moglia's chest. Bang! A violent impact with extremely terrifying power surged into Moglia's body. Poochie! Moglia only felt as if he was hit by a heavy hammer. His chest shook, his body trembled, and he directly spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 372. Crimson blood spurted out of Moglia's mouth and sprayed in the direction of Noah. Noah casually sidestepped and avoided the spray of blood. He twisted his body and suddenly lifted his leg. His thigh was like a long whip as it suddenly lashed out and heavily smashed into Moglia's chest before he could be sent flying. That position was exactly the same as the position where Noah had previously swung his fist. Bang! Along with a muffled sound, a kacha sound was heard from Moglia's chest. Wah! Blood spurted out of Moglia's mouth as if it was free of charge. Moglia himself was hit by Noah's meteor-like kick and suddenly fell to the ground, smashing it until it cracked slightly. Looking at this scene, the group of Phantom Lord magic shooters were all shocked and dumbfounded. Stepping on Moglia's chest and looking down at Moglia's face that was covered in blood, Noah's face was calm. I've repaid my debt to you. You. Moglia raised his hand with difficulty and pointed at Noah with a trembling hand. Other than disbelief, there was only disbelief on his face. Unlike those Phantom Lord magic shooters, Moglia knew that Noah was a fairy tale magic shooter. However, in the past 7 years, the reputation of the powerful magic shooters in Fairy Tale had long been known by everyone. Even the fire-annihilating dragon magic shooter, Naz, had made a name for himself. However, Noah had not made a name for himself in the past 7 years. When Laxas became an S-rank magic shooter and his strength advanced by leaps and bounds, the name Noah did not appear. When Alusha received the title Fairy Queen and her reputation shook the Fiori Kingdom, the name Noah still did not appear. Later, when Demon Mira Jenny, Fire Dragon Naz, the enigmatic Mishgang, and even Grey and Elfman made a name for themselves, the name Noah did not appear at all. Only when people mentioned Makarov and Laxas's family did they make a name for themselves. Other than that, not to mention the Fiori Kingdom, even the people of Magnolia did not mention Noah. Over time, Maglia thought that he had misjudged Noah and thought that he was not a genius at all. In the beginning, he still wanted to find trouble with Noah, but later on, because there was no news of Noah, he threw it to the back of his mind. He did not expect that after 7 years, this person would appear in front of him once again. Just when he thought that he could still crush him with one hand, the result was that he was defeated in one move. At this moment, Maglia only felt that his vision turned black. The humiliation that emerged from his heart was 1,000 times, 10,000 times heavier than before. Because this time, Maglia was no longer dealt with cleanly by a little brat in the wilderness. Instead, he was dealt with in front of the many colleagues of the Phantom Lord. From now on, everyone would know of Maglia's embarrassing incident. They would know that he had overestimated himself and rushed out, only to be cleanly defeated in the end. Poochie. The uncontrollable humiliation made Maglia spit out another mouthful of blood. His head tilted to one side and he actually fainted. Seeing this, Noah frowned and snorted coldly. When I think that it was a guy like you who left a scar on my hand, I feel disgusted. After saying this, Noah lifted the foot that was stepping on Maglia's chest and ruthlessly kicked his side ribs. Pung! In the muffled sound, Maglia's limp body that was lying on the ground was kicked away like a rubber ball. He smashed into a table not far away and was buried by the table debris and tableware in a burst of crackling sounds. I'll say it again. Just like kicking away a rock that was in the way, after kicking Maglia away, Noah stepped forward step by step and walked into the Phantom Lord's guild. He stared coldly at the group of sorcerers who looked like gangsters. Tell Joseph to get out here, or else, I'll tear this place down. The group of magic shooters from the Phantom Lord all retreated together with a frightened expression on their faces. This time, no one dared to look down on Noah. It must be known that Maglia's strength was one of the best in the Phantom Lord, and was only below Gadjalu and the 4 elements. Even such a person was defeated by the little brat that everyone from the Phantom Lord had just mocked. Who would be stupid enough to continue to think that Noah was just a little brat? However, there was no lack of people in this world who overestimated their own strength. Don't. Everyone, don't be afraid. In the crowd, a deliberately fierce voice shouted. No matter how powerful he is, he's only one person. There are so many of us here, why should we be afraid of a kid? Everyone, let's attack together. This sentence made the magic shooters from the Phantom Lord hesitate for a moment, and then they all showed a sinister expression. Attack. Everyone, attack together. Oh, 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 oh. Not long after, the whole Phantom Lord guild roared. One by one, magic shooters rushed out with weapons in their hands, like crazy wild dogs or bullies bullying the weak, and rushed towards Noah. With just a glance, Noah could tell that these so-called sorcerers who were rushing towards him were using magic similar to the outfit change type of magic. In other words, the magic these people used was the most common type. There were redeeming qualities. However, not a single person was able to display their full potential. Trash. Real trash. This was the drawback of the Phantom Lord focusing too much on developing the guild scale and expanding its influence, but not concentrating on cultivating the strong. Therefore, other than Gadjalu and the 4 elements, the only thing that the Phantom Lord could bring out was the number of people. Thinking that it was such a guild that destroyed his own guild, Noah's anger rose in his heart. Square root. Spitting out a language that no one could understand, Noah raised his hand, gathered magic on his finger, and wrote a faintly discernible mysterious rune in the air in front of him. Wang. Suddenly, in front of Noah, the air suddenly condensed, spiraled, and turned into a gust of wind, like a substantial shock wave, suddenly shaking out. Dong! In an instant, it was as if an invisible explosion had occurred in the entire Phantom Lord Guild. The shock wave formed by the surging wind was like a wave, hitting the magic shooters one by one. Bang! The magic shooters of the Phantom Lord felt as if they had hit a wall, and then, in bursts of screams, they flew upside down, or hit the ground, or hit the wall, overturning tables and chairs, and cracking the ground, causing the ground to shake violently. For a time, the sound of wailing continued to reverberate. In just a moment, all the magic shooters of the Phantom Lord were defeated by Noah. In this regard, Noah just withdrew his hand and sighed. "Are you done watching the show?" The whole place suddenly became quiet. After a while, a few figures appeared at the entrance of the stairs in front of Noah's eyes. It was Gadjaloo and the Four Elements. Noah's gaze swept across Gadjaloo, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul, and finally fell on Gadjaloo. From this person, Noah could sense the aura of the person from last night. Therefore, there was no doubt that the person who attacked the Fairy Tale Guild was this guy in front of him. Gadjaloo Ret Fox. Chapter 373. The wails of the sorcerers from the Phantom Lord were still echoing in the air. In the middle of the magic shooters lying on the ground, Noah, Gadjaloo, Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul looked at each other from a distance, causing the atmosphere in the air to become heavy. Too sad. Too sad. Aaliyah, whose eyes were wrapped with a cloth, cried without the slightest warning. A young life will wither here in a while, it's really too sad. No. 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 Saul twisted his body like an earthworm, spread out his hands pretentiously, tilted his head, and looked at Noah. Although it's just a group of small fries, to be able to defeat so many magic shooters in an instant, you're definitely not an ordinary kid. I'm very curious about who you are. The sharp-eyed Bunny Ball saw the guild emblem on the back of Noah's hand and frowned. Fairy tale? Makarov actually let you come alone? Pitter-patter-patter. Julian, who was holding an umbrella, also had a sullen expression. Unfortunately, it seems that this person can't leave here. The four S-rank magic shooters from the Phantom Lord spoke as if there was no one else around. They didn't take the wailing magic shooters lying on the ground seriously, nor did they show any importance to Noah, as if they had already sentenced Noah to death. Only Gadjaloo, whose inorganic eyes seemed to be cast out of steel, stared at Noah with a gloomy expression. "You're the one who attacked me last night, right?" These words shocked the members of the Four Elements, and they all looked at Noah one after another. Him? The sorcerer who defeated the entire Phantom Lord was not worthy of much praise from the people of the Four Elements. After all, as a member of the same guild, it was impossible for the Four Elements Guild not to know how lousy the normal magic shooters in the Phantom Lord were. But if the other party was the one who injured Gadjaloo last night, then it would be different. After all, even Joseph claimed that in a fairy tale, apart from those S-rank magic shooters, no one could injure Gadjaloo to such an extent. In other words, if the person in front of him was really the culprit who injured Gadjaloo and was also a magic shooter from fairy tale, then the other party's strength was definitely S-rank. The Four Elements had no choice but to pay attention to this matter. So that's how it is. Noah looked directly at Gadjaloo and suddenly smiled. In other words, the person who attacked my house last night was really you, right? He. Gadjaloo let out a strange laugh. That's right, I was the one who turned your union into a pile of trash. Is that so? Noah closed his eyes. Then I've found the right person. As soon as his voice fell. Boom! With the sound of an explosion and a gorgeous vortex of air under Noah's feet, Noah's body turned into a stream of light and flashed like a comet, instantly appearing in front of Gadjaloo. In the next moment, a wisp of blue flame rose from Noah's hand and turned into a pitch-black knight's sword, which fell into Noah's hand. Clang! The slash that turned into a dazzling sword light suddenly flashed, and like a whip, it flung across Gadjaloo's body. Poochie! A burst of blood burst out in front of Gadjaloo's chest. Blood spilled into the sky. Gadjaloo's pupils slowly shrank, and soon shrank to the size of a needle tip. His body carried a burst of blood, and as if he was flying out in the air, he retreated. As for the Four Elements, their expressions gradually stiffened when they saw the blood droplets flying into the air. Regardless of whether it was Aaliyah, Julian, Bunny Ball, or Saul, none of them could react, let alone know what had happened. Only Gadjaloo looked at Noah, who was 10 meters away a second ago and suddenly appeared in front of him. Noah's eyes flashed with a cold light as he held the black knight's sword in his hand. A sharp pain spread from his chest to his whole body as he felt it in hindsight. With a closer look, Gadgelow saw a hideous and terrifying wound from his shoulder to his ribs. Along with a burst of red blood, his clothes were dyed red little by little. Gadgelow, who vaguely sensed what had happened, had a fierce expression. Ignoring the serious wound on his chest, he stomped on the ground with one foot and steadied himself. Then, he clenched his iron-gloved hand into a fist and raised it. Iron Dragon Staff. As soon as he finished speaking, Gadgelow waved his fist fiercely. His fist directly transformed into a thick iron rod, like a steel water pipe taken out from an underground tunnel somewhere. With a gust of wind, it violently shot towards Noah's face like an arrow released from a bow. Bang! Just as the thick iron staff was about to hit Noah's face, Noah raised his hand and firmly caught the incoming thick iron staff with a muffled sound and a slight gust of wind. Only then did the four elements react. Shocked, they jumped up without hesitation and put some distance between them. Looking at the scene in the middle, a shocked expression appeared on their faces. Drip, one hand turned into an iron staff and swung forward, while the other hand held the wound on his chest. A drop of blood dripped from Gadgelow's body and gradually dyed the ground red. Cough, cough. Gadgelow couldn't help but cough up a mouthful of blood. He raised his head and stared at Noah not far in front of him, growling. Bastard. Not bad. You can still launch an attack with such a heavy injury. However, you dare to attack my house directly? If you don't have this ability, you won't be able to do it. Holding the iron staff formed by Gadgelow's fist, Noah raised his eyes and looked at Gadgelow. There was only calmness on his face. If I'm not wrong, you should be using the same spell as our guild's Naz Dragon Slayer spell, right? Who would tell you this, guy? Enduring the severe pain in his chest, Gadgelow angrily shouted. Who are you? Since when did Fairy Tale have a character like you? I've never even heard of you. Damn it. It doesn't matter if you don't know me. Noah sneered. Next, I'll make sure you never forget me. This time, before his voice faded, Noah's figure suddenly rushed out, causing Gadgelow's vision to blur. Then, Noah's figure appeared in front of him again, bringing along a whirlwind. His fist punched out, viciously smashing towards Gadgelow's head. Due to the destruction of his guild, Noah had unleashed every ounce of power he had this time. He had held nothing back. Under such circumstances, Gadgelow was not a powerful opponent for Noah at all. Thus, when Noah's fist was about to reach Gadgelow's head, Gadgelow sensed it while being on high alert. His expression changed drastically, and in a hurry, he raised his hands and crossed them in front of his head. Mana surged up, turning his arms into steel. Clank. The heavy fist landed heavily on Gadgelow's crossed arms that had turned into steel. Gadgelow let out a muffled sound and his feet slid across the ground. After retreating for nearly 10 meters, he finally stabilized his body. Feeling the numbness from Noah's punch, shock appeared on Gadgelow's face. His hands had turned into steel, yet he could still cause such an impact. Who on earth was this person? You're still looking? Gadgelow yelled at the four elementals beside him in shock. Let's go together. Hearing this, Alia, Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul suddenly woke up. They couldn't care less about their numbers and began to surge the mana in their bodies. But at this moment, Noah didn't choose to continue attacking. Instead, he lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and rapidly retreated. Wang! Without giving Gadgelow and the four elements any chance to react, a circle of gorgeous rainbow ripples spread out from the ground with Gadgelow as the center and instantly covered the ground where Gadgelow and the four elements were. In the gorgeous rainbow ripples, runes flashed one after another. Surprisingly, it was the Runi script. Chapter 374. Wang. The gorgeous rainbow-colored ripples seemed to have turned the ground into a rainbow-colored lake. Wherever the ripples touched, the ground was replaced by rainbow-colored light, turning into a gorgeous curtain of light. In the curtain of light, mysterious runes jumped up and down like small fish, blooming with dazzling light. When combined together, they formed the beautiful curtain of light on the ground. If one were to count them carefully, they would find that there were at least 1,000 runes written on the ground. In other words, Noah had unknowingly carved more than 1,000 runes on the ground where Gadjalu, Aliyah, Julibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul were. If Qing Zi, Yu Zhu, or Cheng, who was also a master of the runi magic, knew about this, they would definitely be shocked. Although after a certain degree of improvement, magicians who used the runi magic trick could more or less increase the speed of inscribing runi magic trick, imagine how proficient Noah was at inscribing so many runi magic tricks without even realizing it. One could only imagine how proficient he was at the runi magic trick. As for Noah, it had been less than 3 months since he had learned the first elementary level of the runi script. In 3 months, he had improved the runi magic to such an extent? Perhaps the gods, priests, and witches who used the runes in Norse mythology could do it, but among modern magicians, there was absolutely no one who could do it to such an extent. Gadjalu, Aliyah, Julibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul, who didn't know what kind of feat Noah had done, only felt that something strange had happened on the ground. When they discovered that the ground had been replaced by the rainbow-colored curtain of light, they suddenly shouted in unison, "Oh no! Wang!" At this moment, the rainbow-colored curtain of light on the ground suddenly shook, and the light on it became even more dazzling. Immediately, dazzling pillars of light suddenly rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light. Ding 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 ding. Every pillar of light raised a bell-like sound, and in a short period of time, countless pillars of light rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light. When Gadjalu, Aliyah, Julibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul reacted, the dazzling pillars of light rose from the rainbow-colored curtain of light and formed a light cage around them, imprisoning them inside. Wang! Gadjalu resisted the sharp pain in his body, raised his steel-like fist, and heavily smashed it on the light cage. Clang! In the end, the blow that was powerful enough to shatter the wall only caused a crisp sound. It was as if it had also hit steel, and there was not even a trace of a crack. What kind of magic is this? Rune magic? Aliyah, who could no longer pretend to cry. She removed the bandage around her eyes. Her eyes, which looked like 4 petals combined, exuded a strange aura, which made Aliyah's magic power by several levels. Sky Domain Absolute. Aliyah raised her palm, which gathered a large amount of magic power, and like Gadjalu, heavily smashed it on the light cage. Bang! A powerful shockwave suddenly appeared like a storm and landed on the light prison. However, it only caused the entire light prison to tremble, but it was unable to create even a single crack. Impossible! Aliyah cried out in alarm. I've already released all my magic power, but I still can't break this cage. Even Gadjalu and Aliyah couldn't do anything to the prison of light, so Julian, Bunny Ball, and Thor couldn't do anything. After all, Gadjalu was known as the most powerful sorcerer in the Phantom Lord. Aliyah, on the other hand, was the leader of the 4 elements and the strongest of them all. If Gadjalu and Aliyah couldn't break this cage, then Julibian, Bunny Pill, and Saul couldn't do anything either. Not even Julibian. The umbrella in Julibian's hand was thrown away at some point, and his body turned into water, but he couldn't pass through the cage. This cage can reflect magic power. Even the ground is imprisoned. Saul cried out. Even I, who can control sand, can't drill into the ground. There's no way out of this cage. Tisk. Bunny Pill, who knew that magic was useless, even used the knife at his waist to slash at the light cage, but it only made a crisp clang sound. No, physical attacks can't break it. In other words, the 5 strongest members of the Phantom Lord, with the exception of the guild leader Joseph, were all subdued by Noah in one move. In front of Noah, regardless of whether it was the strongest of the Phantom Lords, Gadjalu, or the 4 elements, who was comparable to an S-rank magic shooter, they were all like ordinary magic shooters lying on the ground. They were not a match for Noah's one move. This was to be expected. This cage, if it was the S-rank magic shooters of Fairy Tale, any one of them would have the ability to break it. Noah, who was holding the pitch-black knight's sword, stood in front of the 5 light cages and looked at Gadulu's group of 5 as he sneered. And the S-rank sorcerer of the Phantom Lord doesn't seem to have the ability to do so. The expressions of Gadulu and the 4 elements immediately turned ugly. In the outside world, people had always compared Fairy Tale and Phantom Lord, saying that the 2 guilds were evenly matched. Fairy Tale had 5 S-rank magic shooters, including Mira, Elusha, Kildas, Laxas, and Mishgang. The Phantom Lord also had Gadulu, Ulia, Jubian, Bunny Ball, and Thor, a group of 5 S-rank sorcerers. Therefore, outsiders had always thought that the 2 guilds were evenly matched. However, this was actually a misconception. The difficulty of the S-rank magic shooters advancement test in each guild was different. As for Fairy Tale's S-rank magic shooter advancement test, it had always been known as the most difficult test. This was because only S-rank magic shooters could accept S-rank missions. Because S-rank missions were too dangerous, and because Makarov loved everyone in the guild and treated them as his own family and children, Makarov raised the difficulty of the S-rank magic shooters advancement test to the highest level. That way, the magic shooters who could pass the test with powerful abilities would naturally have a higher chance of surviving the mission. But Phantom Lord was obviously different. Unlike Makarov, Joseph did not treat the members of the guild as his family. In Noah's opinion, the so-called S-rank magic shooters of Phantom Lord were better than Naz and Grey, while some could only be considered at the same level. They could not be compared to S-rank magic shooters like Mira and Elusha. And for Noah, who had absolute confidence in defeating such an opponent, even the 10 Saints Makarov, Kildas, and Laxas, would not need too much time to go all out and take him down. Noah stepped forward and arrived in front of Gadulu. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Gadulu's collar, pulling him over. Bang! Gadulu's head suddenly slammed into the light cage, making him furious. You bastard! You destroyed our guild, so I'll destroy your guild too. Noah tightened his grip on Gadulu's collar and looked at Gadulu's angry face with an indifferent smile. If you're not convinced, remember to look for me at any time. My name is Noah Doria. With that, Noah let go of Gadulu, glanced at everyone present, turned around, and walked out, disappearing in front of the door. The moment Noah left, all the runes on the ground swelled up. Boom! Not long after, a mushroom cloud rose into the sky amidst the thunderous explosion. Chapter 375. Pa. Pa pa, the sound of small stones rolling down echoed from time to time, spreading in all directions. Among them, a piece of stone rolled towards the distance, rolling to the foot of a clown-like boot. Bang! The clown-like boot violently lifted up the foot, crushing the stone that rolled to his foot. Following the crushing of the stone, an indescribable evil aura spread out from the owner of the foot. The person who came was the leader of the Phantom Lord, Joseph. Lifting his gloomy skeleton-like face, Joseph gloomily looked at the scene in front of him. He saw that the large building that should have stood there had long disappeared and was replaced by ruins. Rubble from the walls were piled up everywhere in the ruins. Broken pillars were lying crookedly on the bodies of the people buried under the rubble. Flames burned in every corner of the ruins, and a burnt smell filled the air. Seeing the guild building, which was still intact an hour ago, turn into a pile of rubble right before his eyes, the fury and murderous intent in Joseph's heart uncontrollably surged, causing the ink-black and evil magic energy within his body to continuously surge, bringing about an evil aura that sent chills down one's spine. There was only one person here, Joseph. To be precise, Joseph was the only one who maintained a complete consciousness and was unscathed. Looking at the magic shooters who were lying in the corners, buried under rubble or crushed by pillars, Joseph's anger and murderous intent became more and more violent. He didn't know if they were dead or alive, and the magic shooters who should have belonged to the Phantom Lord became more and more violent. Of course, even though Joseph was the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, he wasn't the kind of guild leader who would take pity on his subordinates and sympathize with them. For Joseph, as long as he could ensure the absolute ruling position of the Phantom Lord, and not reduce the overall strength of the Phantom Lord, then he would not feel any heartache about the deaths of his subordinates. The real reason why Joseph was so angry and couldn't help but squander his killing intent was that he had only been away for a short hour, and in the end, his own guild had been reduced to ruins. Who was it? Who had the guts and ability to do this? What about Gadjaloo? Aaliyah? Julian, Bunny Ball, and Saul? Could it be that the person who came was a powerful enemy of the Phantom Lord, who had the ability to destroy the elites of the Phantom Lord? Makarov? No. Impossible. If it was Makarov, then the Phantom Lord, who had already prepared the means to deal with Makarov, would not have become like this. With incomprehensible doubts, frenzied anger, and murderous intent, Joseph lifted his feet and walked into the ruined Phantom Lord. He came to the middle of what was supposed to be the hall. There were only 5 people lying here. They were the so-called elites of the Phantom Lord, in Joseph's mind Gadjaloo and the 4 elements. However, at this moment, not only were these so-called elites of the Phantom Lord covered in wounds, but they were all on the verge of death. Especially Gadjaloo, the injuries on his body were so severe that it was terrifying. If he was not treated, he might even die. In this regard, Joseph did not have any pity in his heart. There was only crazy anger and murderous intent. Dash. At this moment, a charred hand reached out from the side and grabbed Joseph's foot. Joseph subconsciously lowered his head and looked at his feet. There, Aaliyah, who had unsealed the seal on her eyes, propped up a pair of eyes that seemed to be bleeding due to excessive use of magic power. She weakly and with great difficulty spat out a word. This word made the anger and murderous intent in Joseph's heart burst out instantly. Fairy tale. Not long after, Joseph's roar, accompanied by a dark evil magic power, surged into the sky. Joseph did not know. After the fairy tale guild was destroyed, many people in the fairy tale guild were like him, roaring the Phantom Lord in their hearts. On the other side, when Noah returned to the fairy tale, once again, a beautiful figure rushed out and hugged Noah. Big brother Noah. Lisanna? Noah knew who the person in his arms was the moment he heard her address him. He patted her on the back and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What's wrong? Why did you suddenly rush over like this? You're still talking about it. Lisanna raised her head and glared at Noah. Soon after, she seemed to have thought of something and her slender hands began to caress Noah's body. How are you? Are you hurt anywhere? Let me see. I'm not hurt. Noah hurriedly grabbed Lisanna's hand that was groping his body, knocked her on the head, and said in annoyance, Don't worry about it. Don't make a fuss. People who don't know will think that I went to fight with someone. Hearing Noah's words, not to mention Lisanna, everyone in the guild laughed bitterly. Didn't you go out to fight with someone? It's good that you're fine. Mira also walked out of the guild with a confused smile on her face. The guild has been destroyed. If even you, Noah, are injured, then we really don't know what to do. Mira is right. Elusha also came out and said with a serious expression. As long as you're fine, the guild can be rebuilt at any time. The guild leader's judgment is correct, so don't do anything rash in the future. Upon hearing this, Noah lifted his head, only to discover that the members of the guild had all come out of the guild with heavy expressions on their faces. Seeing the confusion on Myra's face, the worry on Lisanna's face, Elusha's serious expression, and the solemn expressions of the guild members, Noah sighed inwardly. It seemed that the destruction of the guild didn't just affect him, but also his companions. Unlike the Phantom Lord, the members of Fairy Tale had a strong sense of belonging to the guild and treated it as their spiritual support. Now that their spiritual support was destroyed, it was easy to imagine how depressed they were. Everyone, don't look as if something has left you forever. Pull yourself together. Noah said loudly as he gently pushed Lisanna away from his embrace. It's just a building. Although this building was built by the first president, even if it's destroyed, it doesn't mean that Fairy Tale is also destroyed. Everyone can just rebuild another one. Don't forget, we're Fairy Tale. If those bastards who destroyed our guild see us like this, they'll be so happy that they won't be able to speak. Noah's voice reverberated in the surroundings and entered everyone's ears. We should let those bastards see our strength, not our weakness. So, everyone, pull yourself together and rebuild Fairy Tale with me. Noah's words seemed to sweep away the darkness in everyone's hearts, causing them to feel a surge of hot blood. Oh! In the next moment, the cheers belonging to Fairy Tale once again resounded through the air. Seeing this scene, Noah suddenly smiled. Mira, Lisanna, and Alusha all wore gentle expressions as they looked at Noah with pride in their hearts. Even Makarov, who was quietly watching from afar. Chapter 376. Compared to the Phantom Lord, the damage done to the Fairy Tale wasn't as severe. After all, the Phantom Lord had turned the entire guild into ruins, while the Fairy Tale was only damaged by Gadula's attack. It still looked like it was there, and it would not take long to repair it. However, in order to prevent the Fairy Tale from being destroyed by an unknown attack again, Noah suggested that the entire Fairy Tale be demolished and rebuilt. In fact, the Fairy Tale's guild building was considered very old among the many guilds in the Fiori Kingdom. In the Kingdom of Fiori, any guild with a bit of fame would build a grand guild building. It was necessary to show off one's status and reputation. No one would be willing to entrust a guild with a rundown guild building to complete, right? Therefore, for a guild, reputation was not only a matter of face, but also related to business. It was very important. However, in the past, the Fairy Tale had never paid attention to this point. For Fairy Tale, the problem of appearance was actually not that big of a deal. Everyone in the Kingdom of Fiore knew of Fairy Tale's power and strength. Under such circumstances, all the clients would come because of its reputation, so why would they care about the appearance of the shop? But now, this problem had to be brought up. A grand building had its advantages, and one of them was that it was not easy to damage. Therefore, Noah suggested to demolish and rebuild the guild building. Noah wasn't willing to let a guild that didn't include him be destroyed so easily. Therefore, in order to increase the guild's defense, Noah's suggestion was supported by everyone, including Makarov. Of course, Noah wanted to demolish and rebuild the guild not only to increase the guild's defense, but also to build a defense system for the guild. In the corner of the guild building that was demolished, Noah moved a building material in front of him to the side and shouted without turning his head. Next one. Coming. On the side, Naz, who was carrying a building material, immediately placed the building material in front of Noah and ran to move the next one. At this time, Noah began to work on the building material in front of him, gathering magic with his fingers. He drew a precise rune on the building material in front of him. These faintly discernible runes were like fireflies attached to the building material. Noah was carving the rune, on the building material for the new guild building. This way, after using the building material carved with rune, to build the new guild building, as long as he bought some magic crystals that could provide magic power, the runes carved in the new guild building could be used to defend against external enemies. It was for this purpose that Noah proposed to rebuild the guild building. If the original guild building was repaired, it could still carve runes. However, if the guild building was weak, the chances of the runes being damaged would be very high. This was why Noah came up with the idea of rebuilding the guild building. He wanted the guild building to be more resistant to damage, so as to not affect the runes. Beside Noah, the petite Lebby was holding a book. Wearing glasses, she was looking at the contents of the book while looking at the runes that Noah was carving. Not long after, she spoke with great surprise. This kind of language can't even be found in books. What kind of language is this? This is a very ancient language. I learned it in a very special place. Noah continued with the work at hand and answered without turning his head. In this world, there is no one else besides me who can recognize it. I didn't expect you to have such knowledge, Noah, Lebby asked curiously. This kind of language can be used as magic? Can you teach me? Noah was not surprised that Lebby would ask such a question. Lebby was a very studious girl. Her hobby was to read books. She had a certain preference for knowledge, and she had a very deep interest in language. Therefore, Leby's magic was called three-dimensional language. It was a strange magic that could make the language itself three-dimensional and realize the meaning of the language before throwing it at the opponent. For example, if the opponent was attacked by the fire language that Leby drew, it would be as if they were hit by a fireball and would be burned. This kind of magic was somewhat similar to rune magic. Therefore, it was not strange that Leby would be interested in rune magic. Unfortunately, even if she was interested, Leby could not learn rune magic. If you just want to learn the language, then I don't mind teaching you. But if you want to use it to use magic, then I'll have to disappoint you. Noah scratched his face with his free hand. If you want to use this kind of language to the effect of magic, you need a condition that is almost impossible for people in this world to achieve. Leby can't do it. If you want to use magic, you need to be in contact with the magic base plate, in the world of Night of the Magicians. Noah could use the world's active guidance to use magic no matter which world he was in, but others could not. Is that so? Leby seemed to be a little disappointed, but she quickly pulled herself together. It's okay. Even if I can't use it as magic, I'm still very interested in this language. Teach me. Okay, I'll teach you when I have time. Noah did not refuse and directly agreed. If it's Leby, you should be able to learn it quickly. That's great. Thank you. Leby suddenly smiled happily. Seeing this scene, not far away, Jet and Troy, who were helping to rebuild the guild, looked unhappy. Why is Leby in Noah's world again? Undoubtedly, Noah has Mira. Mira, who was delivering drinks to the guild members, seemed to have heard someone calling her. She turned her head and looked at Jet and Troy in confusion. What's wrong? No, nothing. Jet and Troy hurriedly waved their hands and shook their heads, but their eyes kept moving in the direction of Noah and Leby, who were chatting happily. The more they looked, the more they felt a surge of jealousy in their hearts. Although Jet and Troy liked Leby, they were not unreasonable people who could not stand Leby getting close to other men. However, when they saw Leby getting close to Noah, Jet and Troy felt an inexplicable uneasiness. Intuition told Jet and Troy that there might not be anything wrong with Leby getting close to other men, but if she were to get close to Noah, even if there was nothing wrong, it might develop into something. Was this a man's intuition? Amidst this joyous and comical atmosphere, the rebuilding of the guild continued to progress. At this moment, a series of extremely orderly and loud footsteps could be heard from outside. The footsteps gradually drew the attention of all the members of Fairy Tale who were working. Everyone looked towards the sound, but the scene that entered their eyes made them all stunned. On the street outside, a group of fully armed soldiers holding spear-like staff-shaped weapons rushed towards the rebuilt Fairy Tale. They looked like a group of knights, but in reality, they had the sense of an orderly army. At the sight of this military-like team, not only were the people present, but even Noah was a little stunned. That's the council? The council? Everyone looked at each other in confusion. At this moment, the army stopped outside, and a strange person with a frog-like head walked out. I'm the messenger of the council. Without even greeting the members of Fairy Tale, or even looking at the confused Fairy Tale guild leader, Makarov, the man who claimed to be the representative of the Senate said those words. By order of the council, we are here to arrest the criminal Noah Doria. Chapter 377. On the orders of the council, we are here to arrest the criminal, Noah Dole. When these words echoed in the surroundings and drilled into everyone's ears, the whole place suddenly fell silent. Noah was startled at first, then he squinted his eyes and smiled inexplicably. Arrest Noah? Beside him, Leby cried out in surprise. It wasn't just Leby. Even Mira, Lisanna, Elusha, and the others looked at Noah in surprise. Then, they looked at each other with worried expressions. The messenger of the council didn't seem to notice the reactions of the people present. He looked around and said to himself. Where is Fairy Tale's Noah Dole? I am the guild master of Fairy Tale. Makarov parted the crowd and walked out. He looked at the messenger of the council with an unprecedentedly serious expression. "May I ask, why is the council arresting Noah, arresting my grandson?" As soon as he said this, a gloomy laugh sounded. "Let me tell you, Makarov." Along with this uncomfortable voice, a guy wearing a sorcerer's hat and dressed like a sorcerer walked out from the army outside with a sinister smile on his face, entering the eyes of everyone present. That is, with Alusha as the leader, the fairy tale's archmages were shocked. Makarov's face darkened, and the veins in his eyes bulged. He looked at the newcomer with anger. "Joseph. Long time no see, Sir Makarov." Joseph sneered. "But I'm sorry, I'm not here to catch up. How dare you appear in front of me?" Makarov waved his hand as if he would attack at any time. His voice was like thunder, rumbling. "How dare you appear in front of me after destroying my guild?" "Sir Makarov, you can't say such things," Joseph said with a smile. "Undoubtedly, you are the ones who destroyed my guild. How can you accuse me so casually?" Hearing Joseph's words, not to mention Makarov, even the members of Fairy Tale showed anger. Aya, this is something that everyone saw." Joseph spread his hands and looked around. After a while, he fixed his gaze on Noah, who was looking at them with a faint smile. A cold light flashed in his eyes. "My guild was destroyed yesterday, and the members of my guild suffered great casualties. According to the people who woke up, Sir Makarov, the one who caused our guild to suffer such great losses is your dear grandson." Wah! This time, Makarov finally showed a shocked expression. Together with the other guild members, he looked at Noah. Yesterday, Noah did indeed go to the Phantom Lord, and the members of Fairy Tale knew about it. Originally, Makarov and the others thought that Noah was only there to find trouble. They didn't expect that Noah would destroy their guild as well. Direct conflicts between guilds are prohibited. Sir Makarov, as the guild leader, you should know about this, right? The representative of the council spoke at the right time. And your grandson, as a member of your guild, knowingly broke the law. We have the right to arrest him. The members of the Fairy Tale Guild were all excited at the same time. If that's the case, that guy should be arrested too, right? Naz jumped out and pointed at Joseph, shouting loudly. "That bastard also destroyed our guild. Look here. Look here. I destroyed your guild? Do you have evidence?" Joseph smiled as if he had expected someone to bring this up. "If you don't talk nonsense. We have many injured people here who testified that Mr. Noah destroyed our guild." Elusha and the others were furious. However, this was an unsolvable problem. When Gadjalu came to destroy Fairy Tale, it was at night, so no one saw him. On the other hand, when Noah went to the Phantom Lord, it was broad daylight. Many people had seen Noah's figure, and he couldn't escape no matter how hard he tried. Joseph probably relied on this point to take the initiative to complain to the council, right? How despicable. Elusha glared at Joseph, her eyes full of sternness. As a member of the 10 great saint magicians and the guild leader of a guild, you don't even dare to admit your own actions? I already said that you can't talk nonsense without evidence, Joseph replied unhurriedly. As long as you can produce evidence, I'll admit it. If not, Mr. Noah will have to go to jail today. Noah. Levi, who was the closest to Noah, couldn't help but worry. Brother Noah. Lisanna also came to Noah's side and tugged at the corner of Noah's clothes, her face full of anxiety. Noah. Mira couldn't help but call out softly, her face full of worry. Noah. Elusha, Lucy, Naz, Gray, Elfman, Kana, Hubby, and the others all looked in Noah's direction, not knowing what to say. Even Makarov closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and fell into silence. Presumably, no one would have thought that Joseph would be the first to complain and even lie through his teeth, right? Undoubtedly, only sorcerers with good moral conduct could be named as one of the 10 great saint magicians. Joseph's despicable actions didn't deserve the title at all. The council that gave Joseph the title of 10 great saint magicians must have had their eyes eaten by dogs. Noah Doria, the messenger from the council, spoke again. Please come with us. Before that, please allow me to ask a question. Noah gently patted Lasana's hand, then walked out and came to Joseph with a smile. President Joseph, Phantom Lord is considered a very powerful guild, right? It's a little strange to say that your guild is very powerful. Joseph looked straight at Noah, his eyes slowly narrowing. However, it's true that the sorcerers in the industry have given our guild a high evaluation. I've heard more than once that Phantom Lord has the ability to become the strongest guild in the Fiori Kingdom. Noah glanced at Joseph with a half-smile. Then, Your Excellency, do you think that I, a brat who has no reputation in fairy tale, and isn't even an S-rank magic shooter, can destroy the existence of the strongest guild in broad daylight in front of the entire Phantom Lord and even bring about great casualties to this guild? You're Makarov's grandson. Who would look down on you? Joseph said with a fake smile. In fact, it's true that you destroyed our guild. Many people can testify to this. That's true. Noah shrugged and laughed inexplicably. Speaking of which, even I'm surprised. The so-called number 1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom is actually so weak that I can destroy it by myself. It really doesn't live up to its name. Joseph's smile froze. Compared to the Phantom Lord, our fairy tale is different, Noah said to himself. Not only did the enemy have the numbers of an entire army, but they also launched a sneak attack at night. Otherwise, our guild wouldn't have been destroyed like this. It seems that our guild is the number 1 in the Fiori Kingdom. Nonsense. Joseph roared angrily. No one in your guild was there that night. Gadgelu destroyed it easily by himself. This sentence was like an echo, constantly lingering in everyone's ears. The moment this sentence was heard, Noah laughed, Makarov laughed, and everyone present laughed. Only Joseph's gloomy face darkened when he came to his senses. Chapter 378. A wicked person complaining first. Lying with his eyes wide open. Despicable villain. Shameless behavior. Indeed, Joseph, who had all the above conditions, could be called a real villain. He had the strength to rival the 10 great saint magicians, but his conduct was so despicable that it made people speechless. As the saying goes, a shameless person is invincible. Although Joseph's move was extremely despicable, it was very effective. If not for the fact that the target was Noah, perhaps someone in fairy tale would have been tricked by Joseph just like that. However, Joseph's behavior, in Noah's view, was simply childish to the extreme. During the 1 year in the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah, because of establishing a relationship with fairy tale, had launched a variety of games with the plundered generation, led by the celestial chrysanthemum prime under the background of politics. At that time, the various methods used by the important members led by the celestial chrysanthemum prime even caught Noah, who possessed superhuman strength, unprepared. He almost fell into one trap after another, simply unscrupulous. That was a truly superb method. With these important members as enemies, if Noah did not have a certain strength and relied on his strength to overcome the waves of danger when he first arrived in the world of the Dark Bullet, Noah's reputation would have been ruined by those people who ate people without spitting out the bones. And Noah, who had withstood all these, gradually got used to these dangers and cultivated the vision and means to play games with those important members. Compared to those guys, Joseph's methods were simply easy to deal with. Noah had at least several methods to deal with him, but in the end, he used the simplest method to deal with him. This Joseph, not only was his methods and conduct despicable, even his temperament was so unbearable. Besides having strength, he had no other strong points. If Noah knew that Joseph let Gadgelu attack fairy tale in order to lure Makarov to make a move and plot against Makarov, then Noah would have a deeper understanding of Joseph's despicable actions. Unfortunately, there was no chance. A simple method of provocation, and Joseph self-destructed. Under the mocking gazes of the members of fairy tale, Joseph looked at Noah with an ugly expression, his eyes revealing an extremely obvious murderous intent. You actually schemed against me? Not bad. Noah bluntly sneered. I thought that with your despicable actions, you wouldn't be able to see through my open scheme. Good. 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 Joseph roared. Makarov really gave birth to a good grandson. Hearing this, Noah smiled but didn't say anything. By the way, to the outside world, Makarov had always claimed that Noah was his biological grandson. The identity of his adopted grandson was only known to the old members of Fairy Tale. That was why Joseph said that. Ahem. The council's emissary didn't seem to think that things would develop to this point. He quickly coughed and glanced at Joseph. I'm sorry, President Joseph, but please come with us. Arrest me? Joseph was so angry that he laughed. You mean that I have to be judged by the council with that kid? To be precise, only you, not me. Noah turned his head and looked at the council's emissary. If you ask the residents of Magnolia, you will know that our guild was attacked the night before the destruction of the Phantom Lord. The council's emissary provoked the Phantom Lord first. I was just retaliating. Hearing Noah's words, the sorcerers in Fairy Tale began to clamor. That's right, that's right. It was the Phantom Lord who provoked us first. They should be the ones to be arrested. We are the victims. Ahem. Makarov pretended to cough. His old face relaxed. That's right, the council's emissary. The council will uphold justice for us, right? This. Of course. The council's emissary let out a few dry laughs. We will uphold justice. As soon as he finished speaking, the military-like people waiting outside looked at each other and approached Joseph's direction. However, at this moment, Joseph suddenly raised his head. His eyes were filled with dark emotions. Boom! A gale of pitch-black mana carried with it an extremely dark and evil aura as it swirled around Joseph, making him look like a demon. Makarov, who was the first to react, turned pale with fright and shouted. Be careful. Almost at the same time, Joseph's angry roar sounded. Go to hell. Joseph raised his hands. The dark magic on his body flowed into his palms like the stinky sewage in a swamp and gathered in a whirlpool. Death Storm. Without the slightest hesitation, Joseph gathered all the mana in his body into his most powerful attack, transforming it into a solid dark shockwave. As if projecting a pitch-black light wave, the shockwave pushed forward amidst the sharp sonic boom. Thus, the dark magic shockwave was like a cannonball. It rubbed against the atmosphere and caused the atmosphere to tremble slightly. It brought about a strong gust of wind and shot out violently. The target was Noah, who was closest to Joseph. In the next second, the pitch-black storm drowned Noah in the violent sound of the wind. Noah. The group of Fairy Tale members all cried out involuntarily. Mira and Lisanna felt their vision darken and almost fainted. Ha 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 ha. Joseph's maniacal laughter reverberated. Joseph. Makarov's furious roar resounded in the sky above Fairy Tale. It was like thunder, lasting for a long time. However, the members of Fairy Tale were worried a little too early, and Joseph was happy a little too early. In the area covered by the dark storm, a dazzling white light suddenly spread out like a tide. It instantly covered the area where the dark storm was wreaking havoc. Pung! In the next instant, the pitch-black storm that was covered by the white light paused as if it had been neatly sliced apart. Amidst a deafening explosion, it shattered, exposing Noah, who was inside, to the sunlight once again. Joseph's maniacal laughter came to an abrupt end. Noah. Everyone, led by Mira and Lisanna, was overjoyed. Noah, however, slowly raised his head and looked at Joseph. The corner of his mouth slowly rose. This way, I'll be the culprit who destroyed our guild. Even if I kill you, it'll only be in self-defense, right? Hearing this, regardless of what the members of Fairy Tale and the members of the Senate were thinking, Joseph's eyes widened as he suddenly understood. It turned out that Noah had long predicted that he would launch a deadly sneak attack on him. He had been secretly on guard, but he didn't take any precautions. Instead, he purposely exposed an opening and waited for Joseph to make his move. This way, even if Noah attacked Joseph and even killed him, it would only be in self-defense. The emissaries of the Senate and the knights from the Senate had personally witnessed all of this. This was more useful than any evidence. That was to say, Joseph had always been trapped in Noah's scheme. Not only was he forced to self-destruct by a simple provocation, but now, he even handed over the power of life and death to Noah. However, in response to this, Joseph roared loudly. Self-defense? Kill me? Are you saying that you want to kill me? Kill me, one of the 10 Saint Magi? You want me to kill you? Noah sneered. You think too highly of yourself. Saying this, Noah walked forward step by step. President Joseph, I just happen to have a pet. Now, let it have a taste of the abilities of the number 1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom and one of the 10 Saint Magi. Chapter 379. Wang. A resplendent golden radiance blossomed from Noah's bandaged arm. That radiance was so dazzling that it made people want to worship it. Like flowing water, it wandered around Noah's body. Not long after, it converged in front of Noah, as if it was giving color to an invisible existence. In the next second, within the resplendent golden radiance that converged like flowing water, an extremely majestic golden wolf with resplendent fur slowly appeared. Roar. Coming from a mysterious existence that only existed in fantasy and legends, a resounding roar that seemed to awaken ancient memories resounded. Everyone present felt as if their souls were moved by this mysterious existence, faintly trembling. Looking at the figure of the golden wolf Bo howling at the sky, many people felt as if they were looking at a dreamlike scene. For a moment, they couldn't help but be infatuated. Including Joseph. However, in the next second, Noah's calm words pulled Joseph, who felt as if he was in a dream, back to reality, and announced the beginning of Joseph's journey to hell. Bo, kill him. The golden wolf Bo fiercely stared at Joseph with his emerald-like eyes, a berserk bloody radiance surfacing within them. Following the sudden sound of wind breaking, Joseph only felt a chill on his skin. Soon after, he saw the golden wolf Bo disappear from his original position, turning into a meteor-like resplendent brilliance, explosively rushing over. Joseph's pupils shrank, but in such a short time, the meteor-like resplendent brilliance arrived in front of Joseph. Soon after, a sharp claw that flickered with cold light cut through the air, bringing along a sharp gale, imprinted itself into Joseph's shrank pupils. In this instant, Joseph's scalp felt as if it had exploded. His heart also shrank in a short moment, fiercely tightening. The shadow of death that rose from the bottom of his heart told Joseph. If he was hit by this claw, then even if Joseph was one of the 10 great Saint Magi, he would still die on the spot. At this moment of life and death, Joseph finally displayed his extraordinary combat experience and sharp intuition as one of the 10 great Saint Magi. He forcibly resisted the shadow of death that rose from the depths of his heart as pitch-black mana burst out of his body, covering it completely. Dong! The sharp claws slammed down and heavily smashed into the pitch-black mana surging from Joseph's body. An unparalleled force gushed out like a flood. Bang! It was as if a heavy hammer had landed directly on a wall. A heavy muffled sound rang out. Slap! Amidst the muffled thud, Joseph's knees buckled as though an extremely heavy object was pressing down on his shoulders. His knees slammed into the hard floor, causing the floor to crack like a spider web. Blocking the almost fatal sharp claws, before Joseph could react, an afterimage once again brought along a sharp gust of wind and approached him like a shadow. That was the tail of the golden wolf Bo. Bang! The tail that turned into a heavy whip fiercely landed on Joseph's chest. The sudden burst of power directly sent this 10 great Saint Magi flying. He fell to the ground with his back on the ground and rubbed a deep mark that was more than 10 meters long on the ground before slowly coming to a stop. Roar! The golden wolf Bo's excited roar resounded as if he had won a victory. Watching this scene unfold before their eyes, everyone present, whether it was the members of the fairy tale or the members of the council, sucked in a breath of cold air. One claw. One twitch. Within 2 moves, a 10 great Saint Magi was knocked to the ground just like that? Impossible. On the other side, Joseph, who had climbed up from the ground in a somewhat sorry state, stared at the golden wolf Bio. His face was filled with fear and fury as he madly roared. How can I lose to a beast? Not knowing if he understood Joseph's words, a fierce glint flashed in the eyes of the golden wolf Bio. His entire body seemed to have turned into liquid as his fur stood up. His 4 limbs heavily stepped on the ground and his lower body arched like a crouching leopard. Chi! The sound of wind breaking resounded in the field once again. The golden wolf Bio, who had turned into a stream of light, swept towards Joseph's direction with extreme speed just like before. However, this time, Joseph was already prepared. The instant the sound of wind breaking resounded, he bitterly clenched his teeth and a pitch-black magic suddenly surged out from his body. As the all-encompassing pitch-black magic rose, it actually transformed into a huge area of 3 to 4 meters in diameter around Joseph. Like a swamp, it completely covered Joseph's body within. From Joseph's perspective, he had used the same method to defend himself just now. Although he was sent flying like a dead dog by the golden wolf Bio in the end, if he set up a defense 10 times denser than before, then the golden wolf Bio's attack would be completely blocked. This idea couldn't be said to be wrong. However, Joseph didn't know that the golden wolf Bio's specialty wasn't strength. The golden wolf Bio's specialty was speed and his innate transformation ability. Woo! With a long howl, the golden wolf Bio, who was shooting towards Joseph like a meteor, trembled. His body actually disintegrated while he was flying, and in the end, he turned into a ball of resplendent golden flames. Bang! With a loud explosion, the golden flames formed by the golden wolf Bio suddenly expanded. In less than a few seconds, it expanded from the size of a person to a size of 2 to 3 meters in diameter. Like a small spinning sun, it was also like a storm formed by flames. It swept out in all directions and fiercely pounced on the pitch-black magic covering Joseph. Chi! The resplendent golden flames burned the pitch-black swamp. Wang! Under the burning of the resplendent golden flames, the swamp formed by the pitch-black magic that pervaded the air violently churned and trembled with the vibrations of the atmosphere. In just a short while, the swamp that was originally as dense as ink became thinner and was gradually replaced by the golden flames. Under such circumstances, the golden flames were still burning the swamp-like area. Ah! In the pitch-black swamp formed by the pitch-black magic, Joseph's extremely miserable shrieks resounded, causing the surrounding people to shudder and reveal fearful expressions. To the people here, one of the 10 great saint magicians was unrivaled. Even Naz wouldn't dream of defeating one of them. But now, one of the 10 great saint magicians was shrieking miserably in front of everyone. Who wouldn't be fearful? Death storm. As the pitch-black swamp became thinner and the pain from his body became more intense, Joseph finally couldn't endure it any longer. With a low growl, he erupted with all the magic in his body, causing the pitch-black swamp to tumble and turn into a pitch-black storm that shook and expanded from the pitch-black swamp. Wherever the pitch-black storm passed, space would tremble. The sharp sound of the wind could be heard clearly in the entire Magnolia. Roar! As the pitch-black storm engulfed the golden flames, Bio's resounding roar reverberated within the golden flames. It swept up the golden flames and turned them into a storm that tangled with the pitch-black storm in the increasingly thin swamp. Boom! 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 As the golden storm and the pitch-black storm clashed in the pitch-black swamp began to tumble violently. Sounds of explosions and bursts of powerful shockwaves could be heard. A moment later, as an energy ripple spread, the entire swamp was shaken apart. Boom! After the swamp was shaken apart, 2 figures slowly emerged from it and were exposed to everyone's eyes. Among them, Golden Wolf Bio's hair stood on end, and he was in high spirits. On the other hand, Joseph's clothes were tattered, and his body was dripping with blood. He looked extremely pathetic and miserable. Clearly, Joseph wasn't a match for Golden Wolf Bio at all. Chapter 380. Golden Wolf Bio, who should have disappeared along with the black storm and swamp, stood unscathed in the center of the cracked ground. His entire body seemed to be burning with flames as it undulated. Paw. Opposite the completely unharmed Golden Wolf Bio, Joseph knelt on the ground with one knee amidst a clear sound. His entire body was dripping with blood and the robe on his body had become tattered like a piece of cloth. This caused Joseph's face to be filled with malevolence and viciousness. His viper-like eyes stared intently at the Golden Wolf Bio opposite him as traces of madness and disbelief fluctuated within his heart. Impossible. 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 It was clear that as one of the 10 Saint Magi and the leader of the number 1 guild in the Fiori Kingdom, the conceited Joseph simply couldn't accept the fact that he had lost to a golden wolf of unknown origins. However, no matter how unbelievable it was a fact that he had lost to the Golden Wolf Bio. Although Joseph was one of the 10 Saint Magi, and his strength was comparable to that of Makarov, Laxas, and Kildas, the Golden Wolf Bio was in existence above them. As a variant of the fantasy breed, the Golden Wolf Bio was far superior to the 10 Saint Magi in terms of both life and strength. Although Joseph wasn't ranked at the bottom of the 10 great Saint Magi, he was only ranked in the middle. With Bio's strength that could rival Noah at full strength, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to deal with someone ranked in the middle of the 10 great Saint Magi. Of course, Joseph, who didn't know what kind of existence Bio was and why he possessed such strength, couldn't believe such a result. It wasn't just Joseph, even the members of Fairy Tale were in disbelief. So strong. Naz stared at the Golden Wolf Bio with a face full of passion, seemingly very excited. That wolf is so strong. That wolf. Makarov looked at the Golden Wolf Bio with a grave expression. Where did that magical creature come from? So strong. Her eyes shone with stars. Where did Big Brother Noah find such a powerful wolf? Could that be the companion that Noah mentioned before? Elusha also stared at the Golden Wolf Bio. That kind of strength really can't be underestimated. The members of Fairy Tale, led by Mira, also turned their gazes to the Golden Wolf Bio. Their faces, eyes, and even hearts were filled with excitement. After all, everyone had seen how the wolf that could defeat the 10 great Saint Archmage Masters had split from Noah's body. In other words, no matter what, that unbelievably powerful wolf was the companion of Fairy Tale. As long as they could confirm this, it would be enough for the people of Fairy Tale. As for the members of the council, they had long been stunned. How is it? President Joseph? Noah, who was standing behind the Golden Wolf Bio, looked down at Joseph, who was kneeling on the ground with one knee on the ground, and mocked him. He mocked, "Are you satisfied with my pet?" That one sentence caused Joseph's entire body to tremble. It wasn't because of excitement or fear, but because of anger. That was because, as one of the 10 Saint Magi, Joseph had indeed lost to the Golden Wolf Bio. And the Golden Wolf Bio was the pet that Noah spoke of. One of the 10 great Saint Magi lost to the pet of an unknown member of Fairy Tale. This is big news. Noah clapped his hands with a smile, but there wasn't the slightest trace of a smile in his eyes. His words made Joseph's heart go crazy. As expected, the Phantom Lord is only at this level? Noah Dole. Joseph's chest heaved up and down as he roared in a hoarse voice. His voice was filled with resentment and fury, causing the people around him to feel a chill. Don't look at me like that. From the moment you planned to destroy my guild, your fate has already been decided. Noah's smile slowly disappeared as a cold light bloomed in his eyes. I'd like to see what qualifications you have to use your smelly guild to challenge Fairy Tale, Bio. Roar. The Golden Wolf Bio let out a low growl. You want to kill me? A strange smile suddenly appeared on Joseph's cold face. It won't be that easy. As soon as he finished speaking, strands of cold black gas appeared on Joseph's body and covered his body. Joseph turned into a black shadow that merged with the ground and strangely disappeared. He escaped. The people around Fairy Tale all cried out in surprise. This Joseph, indeed, had always been doing things that surprised people. As one of the top 10 saint magicians, Joseph was not stingy with his underhanded methods. He even shamelessly called his guild the number 1 guild in the Fiori kingdom, and he himself was the guild leader of this guild. Now, Joseph, who had such an identity, was complacent, and would even go crazy because of Noah's insults, chose to escape without hesitation. Who would have thought? Can you escape? Looking at the place where Joseph originally stood, Noah forcefully waved his hand. B.O. As soon as Noah's voice fell, the golden wolf B.O. in front of Noah jumped up and immediately landed heavily on the ground. Boom! As if a heavy mountain had fallen from the sky and smashed into the scene, the ground shook with the golden wolf B.O. as the center. Inch by inch, the ground cracked open, and a ripple-like impact spread out. Bang! Wherever the impact ripple passed, in a corner of the cracked ground, accompanied by a dull thud, a black shadow was shaken out of the ground with a groan. Like a large piece of trash, it fell to the ground. Picking himself up from the ground with a pale face, Joseph wanted to continue escaping, but his eyes were covered by a black shadow, causing his body to stiffen. With great difficulty, he raised his head and looked forward. There, the golden wolf B.O. looked down at Joseph from above. In his beast eyes, there was contempt and disdain, but more than that, there was a terrifying murderous aura. No. No. Joseph's body trembled. This time, it was really because he was afraid. I am the guild leader of the Phantom Lord, the leader of the number 1 guild in the Fiori kingdom. You can't kill me, you can't kill me. Just as Joseph's voice faded, an emotionless voice was transmitted into his ears, causing all the pores on his body to tighten in an instant. Despicable person. You deserve to die. Along with this sentence, the golden wolf standing in front of Joseph exploded with golden light. With a spin of his body, he once again turned into a golden flame. No! In Joseph's desperate roar, the golden wolf B.O., who had turned into a golden flame, suddenly spun at a high speed, as if even the surrounding air was sucked into the flame. As it spun at a high speed, it carried an extremely terrifying temperature as it flew out and fiercely landed on Joseph's chest. Bang! An incomparably ferocious temperature erupted from the golden flames, smashing heavily onto Joseph's body in an almost berserk manner. Joseph, who did not have the strength to put up any defense, instantly turned from pale to red. A large amount of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. The clothes on his body were instantly burnt to nothing. His body was wrapped up in an extremely short period of time under the eruption of the golden flame. Ah! Suddenly, a mournful scream resounded in the distant sky. After the golden flame lasted for nearly half a minute, it finally gradually rose up and turned back into a wolf form, landing in front of Noah. The figure that was previously in the flame had completely turned into a pile of ashes at this very moment, drifting away with the wind. The entire place suddenly became quiet, falling into a deathly silence. Seeing Noah caressing the head of the golden wolf B.O., who had become extremely docile, everyone knew Noah's name was going to shake the entire Fiori kingdom. Chapter 381. Phantom Lord has been disbanded. News of the destruction of Fairy Tale and the destruction of Phantom Lord spread like wildfire across the entire kingdom of Fiori. 3 days after the destruction of 2 guilds capable of competing for the number 1 spot in the kingdom of Fiori, the news spread across the entire kingdom of Fiori. Now, as long as one was a citizen of the Fiori kingdom, they would definitely know about this matter. They would know that the guild master of Fairy Tale, Makarov Doria, had a grandson named Noah Doria. They would know that Noah Doria had single-handedly destroyed the guild Phantom Lord, which was on par with his own guild. They would know that the guild master of Phantom Lord, one of the top 10 Saint Magi, Joseph Bala, had been killed by one of Noah Doria's golden wolves. He knew that after Joseph's death, all the branches of the Phantom Lord were disbanded by the various organizations in the council in just half a day. This was to be expected. It was said that the guild master of Phantom Lord, Joseph, had secretly planned to destroy Fairy Tale. However, after the members of Fairy Tale had destroyed Phantom Lord, he went to the council to complain. Because of this incident, Joseph would be stripped of his title as one of the top 10 Saint Magi by the council. After all, the title of the top 10 Saint Magi was only given to sorcerers with good conduct. A sorcerer like Joseph who had committed such despicable acts did not have the right to be one of the top 10 Saint Magi. Furthermore, Joseph had viciously launched a sneak attack on the members of Fairy Tale under the witness of the council's emissary and the entire Night Order. What's more, it was a killing blow. Although Joseph was killed in the end, his actions had already spread throughout the Fiori kingdom. Even if the council wanted to protect Joseph's title, it would be impossible. Under such circumstances, the Phantom Lord, who had lost the leader of one of the 10 Saint Magi, was quickly disbanded. The reason was simple. It was because they had offended too many people. Therefore, not long after Joseph's death, the various branches of the Phantom Lord were besieged by the Dark Guild's magic shooters who had been eradicated by the Phantom Lord. The Dark Guild's magic shooters were also targeted and made things difficult for the Phantom Lord's magic shooters. The magic shooters of the Phantom Lord's magic shooters also attacked the Phantom Lord's magic shooters. As a result, the various branches of the Phantom Lord were either annihilated or disbanded under the pressure of the Phantom Lord. On the other hand, Phantom Lord suffered huge casualties because of Noah. In the end, they could only disband and cease to exist in the form of a guild. And so, 3 days later, the Phantom Lord completely disappeared from the borders of the Kingdom of Fiori. In comparison, Fairy Tale's reputation had once again soared. Could it be that the council members called me here just to make me confess to a crime that I didn't commit? How rude! Michelot shouted. Are you saying that as council members, we can't distinguish between right and wrong? If that's not the case, then please speak frankly and don't beat around the bush, okay? Noah impatiently waved his hand. If you call me here to convict me like this, everyone will think that you are trying to make things difficult for me, right? Noah Dole. Oh, Gu slammed the table and stood up. Please pay attention to your attitude. As soon as this sentence fell, a cold gaze swept towards Ogu. Oge's face stiffened, and his whole body froze in place. The ones who should pay attention to your attitude are you all. Noah's sharp eyes swept across the council members of the Magic Council. As members of the council, you do have the right to ban crimes, but I never knew that you have the right to shout at people from a high position. Even if you are a sinner, you should still be respected. This is a principle that the royal family of the Fiori Kingdom knows. If the so-called council members are like this, then I should consider whether I should respond to the kingdom and impeach you. As he said this, the corners of Noah's mouth curled up. I believe that when the time comes, there will be quite a few guilds that will be angered by your arrogant attitude and agree with our fairy tale. Hearing this, other than Yajima and the other council members, Ogu, Michelot, and the others' faces turned red. This was because they were angry. These people would never have thought that an ordinary member of Fairy Tale would criticize all the counselors in such a domineering manner and even threaten to impeach them. However, as the enforcer of law and justice, Noah's words were not inappropriate. In other words, unless the council members really wanted to be impeached, they could only swallow this anger in order to protect their status. Chapter 382. Following Noah's forceful speech, the entire court was covered in an oppressive silence. Ogu, Michelot, and the rest of the judges, whose impression of Noah was already bad because of Fairy Tale, had ugly expressions on their faces, but they couldn't say a single word. They could only stand there stiffly without moving. Under such circumstances, one of the counselors who acted as a middleman spoke. Well, everyone, please calm down. We're here to conduct a fair trial as members of the Senate. We can't let our personal emotions affect the fairness of the trial. It'll be even more disgraceful if we get into an argument. Hearing this, Ogu, Michelot, and the others snorted and turned their heads away. Noah, on the other hand, shifted his gaze to the person who spoke, his eyes flickering with a peculiar glint. The person in front of him was about the same age as Noah. He had short blue hair, and on one side of his cheek, with the eye as the center, a sword-like tattoo was engraved on his handsome face. This wasn't the first time Noah saw this face. He had seen it more than once when he was young. At that time, Noah went out to work for the first time as a magic shooter. When he took on a mission, he used that mission as an opportunity to get to know many people. That was when Mira, Elfman, and Lisanna got to know each other. And during that mission, Noah also got to know two other people. One was like Naz, a dragon whose parents taught him magic went missing, and he met a dragon slayer magic shooter in the forest, Wendy Mabel. The other was a youth who inexplicably fainted in front of Noah and Wendy Jalal. The judge in front of him looked exactly the same as Jalal. When he first saw this person, Noah was shocked and thought that the other party was the youth who called himself Jalal. In the end, after the other party saw Noah, he only looked at Noah with an amused expression. His eyes didn't reveal any other emotions from seeing or hearing Noah's name. Therefore, Noah concluded that this person definitely did not recognize him. As a matter of fact, Noah was even more certain after knowing the other party's name. Zeke Klein. That was the name of the judge in front of him. The other party was not Jalal. But for some reason, this guy called Kieran looked very similar to Jalal. Noah did not know the reason or secret behind this, so he chose to wait and see. However, Noah had a feeling that this guy named Zeke wasn't that simple. "Sir Noah, we have called you here to discuss the matter of Joseph's death," Zeke said to Noah with a smile. "We all know that Joseph destroyed your guild and then ambushed you. Even if he was killed, it could only be said that you were defending yourself. However, some of the people here think that your defense is a little too much, so they want to convict you. Zeke Klein, don't casually stir up trouble." "This is just the truth," Michelot said with an unkind expression. Many people saw with their own eyes how his golden wolf defeated President Joseph with an absolute advantage. After President Joseph was defeated, he allowed his servant to kill President Joseph. This is no longer a matter of self-defense. It's possible that it's premeditated murder. "Michelot, your words are a bit too serious." At this time, Ajima spoke. "He's just a child. How could he deliberately kill someone like President Joseph? So what if he is a child? He is Makarov's grandson." Oh, Kai said without hesitation. "I definitely don't believe that he didn't deliberately condone it. I think it's inappropriate to judge President Joseph's death as a case of self-defense." Hearing this, Noah laughed. His laughter was unusually harsh. Ogu and Michelot glared at Noah. "What are you laughing at?" "What am I laughing at?" Noah said bluntly. "I'm laughing at you guys. Is there really nothing wrong with your brains?" "What did you say?" Ogu and Michelot were angry, but what they got in return was Noah's mocking gaze. "I should be the one asking you what you are talking about, right?" Noah looked at Ogu and Michelot with an extremely disdainful gaze. "What did you think I just heard? You said that many people saw my BO defeat Joseph with an absolute advantage, so attacking the defeated President Joseph became a murder. Then, did you properly ask those people whether President Joseph, who was defeated by BO, gave up on killing me?" Noah said to Michelot righteously. "That President Joseph would launch a sneak attack on me when I wasn't on guard. Then, it wouldn't be strange for him to attack me after losing to BO. In order to protect myself, I let BO attack me, and in the end, I killed him. Could this be considered intentional murder?" Michelot was speechless. "And what you said is even more ridiculous." Noah didn't hide his mockery. "You said that you don't believe that I didn't deliberately condone it, then I condone it on purpose? You said that you don't think it's appropriate to be judged as self-defense, then I have to be judged as premeditated murder? Who do you think you are? You." OGE's eyes widened, and his face was filled with anger. "In one sentence, if you want to convict me, then show me evidence." Noah glanced at Ogu and Michelot. "If you want to convict me without evidence, then it will only show the selfish desires of some people. I suggest that you guys quickly get rid of such a black sheep. Otherwise, who knows when something big will happen. At that time, all the counselors will have to bear the responsibility. I'm sure that your expressions will be more interesting than I imagined." As soon as he said that, the other counselors' expressions all changed. They all stared at Ogu and Michelo, and their expressions changed. Seeing this, Oge's and Michelo's expressions changed, becoming both shocked and furious. This made Noah laugh coldly in his heart. No matter where the so-called high officials were, as long as they had power, then apart from a very small number of people, most of them would become extremely selfish. Just like how the higher one's status was, the more afraid one would be of death. These people would only seek personal gain for their status and power, and were afraid that they would have to bear the responsibility when something big happened. Noah had seen many such people in the world of the dark bullet. Therefore, a casual sentence to sow discord was enough to make these counselors fight amongst themselves. And as expected, most of these so-called counselors had their hearts corroded by power, and were corrupted by the regime. Therefore, Noah could already predict how things would develop next. Ahem, ahem. A counselor deliberately coughed twice and raised his hand. I think that the evidence to convict Noah Doria is insufficient. We should acquit Noah Doria on the spot. Ogu and Michelo's expressions changed again and again. Under such circumstances, the other counselors began to agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. 3 other counselors followed suit. I agree too. A gorgeously dressed woman also raised her hand. I also agree. Chicharito spread out his hands and said. Huh, isn't that great? Ajima laughed out loud. Of course, I can't disagree. You. Ogu and Michelo were furious at first, but soon after, they looked at each other, and their eyes revealed sullen emotions. If they agreed with Ogu and Michelo to convict Noah without evidence, then once the matter was exposed, the counselors would have to bear the crime of deliberately framing him. Those selfish counselors naturally wouldn't put themselves in such a dangerous position just to agree with Ogu and Michelo. Therefore, the result was obvious. And naturally, Ogu and Michelo also cared about their current status as counselors. In a situation where there wasn't enough evidence, they could only speak sullenly. I agree, I agree. Seeing this, Noah looked at the group of counselors calmly and said. Thank you for your insight. The group of counselors laughed embarrassedly and made all sorts of declarations of justice. With the situation so clear, the counselors naturally knew what to do. Now, we announce that Noah Doria is acquitted on the spot due to insufficient evidence. Chapter 383. After the end of the trial, Noah walked out of the courtroom without the slightest reluctance. Along with him was Ajima. Thank you very much, Mr. Ajima. Noah still held some respect for Ajima, who was of the same generation as his grandfather and was also a close friend. In addition, Ajima had indeed helped Fairy Tale a lot, so it was only natural for him to thank him. I've really caused you a lot of trouble. I didn't help you at all. You relied on your own strength to make those counselors speechless. It's really Ajima's blessing to have a grandson like you. Ajima didn't seem to care much, but he seemed to enjoy Noah's respect. It was like meeting a polite child, and his face was peaceful. I have rarely seen such a smart and rational child like you in Fairy Tale. Ajima looked at Noah with great satisfaction. I always thought that the young people in Ajima's guild were very impulsive and needed our protection. Now it seems that we are just meddling in other people's business. I'm getting old. Please don't say that, Mr. Ajima. Noah quickly said. I also have impulsive moments, don't you know that? That's right, even that Joseph was killed by you. You were too harsh. Speaking until here, Ajima couldn't help but sigh. However, this time, Joseph really did go too far. He can't blame others for being killed. Although I think it's a bit inappropriate for you to kill him, but seeing your performance today, I don't think you really did it out of impulse. You must have your own considerations, and Ajima must also think so he didn't blame you, right? Hearing this, Noah was silent. Noah didn't think that he was wrong to kill Joseph. After all, with Joseph's sinister personality, if he was allowed to live, he would definitely find trouble with Fairy Tale by any means possible. He might even cause Fairy Tale's members to encounter all kinds of dangers because of him. Whether it was from the perspective of protecting his companions, protecting his family, or from Joseph's actions, it was absolutely necessary to get rid of Joseph. However, Makarov and Ajima certainly didn't think so. No. It should be said that whether it was Makarov or Ajima, they clearly knew the threat that Joseph brought. However, even so, if they were given a choice, they wouldn't kill Joseph. It wasn't because Makarov and Ajima were too kind, but because they had a kind of tolerance for everyone and sincerely hoped that the other person would walk on the right path. Even if the other person was evil. Although Noah inherited Makarov's magnanimity, his magnanimity wasn't as great as his magnanimity towards all humans. For example, for a child like the cursed child who was extremely pitiful, Noah would feel distressed and want to save them. Another example was the Holy Son of Heaven, who was somewhat naive but absolutely kind-hearted. Noah would also sincerely help him. But for a guy like Joseph whose heart was evil and rotten, Noah wouldn't casually show his tolerance. Of course, if it was only because Joseph was an evil person, Noah wouldn't have the leisure to specifically kill him. The main reason was that Joseph touched Noah's reverse scale and sent himself to death. Noah naturally wouldn't let him go. In general, Noah still wouldn't find fault with Makarov and Ajima's selfless tolerance, but he also had his own way of doing things. He could be tolerant, but he couldn't be truly selfless. No matter which side it was, it couldn't be said to be wrong. It was precisely because of this that Makarov didn't say anything to Noah. Ajima would also unconditionally help Noah like now, right? In short, little Noah, you also have your own considerations. Little Ma chose to believe you, and I will also choose to believe you. Although your way of doing things is a bit extreme, we don't think you're wrong. Ajima put his hands behind his back, raised his head, and looked out of the window, and said earnestly. Little Pony and I are already old, so we won't be able to take care of Fairy Tale for much longer. As you know, there are many people in the council who don't like Fairy Tale. Once Little Pony and I retire, the guild can only be protected by you two. Little Ma was originally worried that there wasn't a suitable successor for the guild, but I think Little Ma should be relieved now. Ajima nodded with gratification. Compared to Laxas, Elusha, and Mishgang, I think you are the best successor for the guild. Little Noah, your own guild also needs to be protected by you, understand? Noah nodded heavily, and watched Ajima's back as he left. When Ajima's figure disappeared from Noah's sight, Noah suddenly spoke. If you continue to hide and secretly observe, I will have to suspect that you have other intentions. As soon as his voice fell, a clap sounded. As expected of an existence that can even kill the 10 Saint Magus Masters. This little trick can't fool you. Accompanied by such a sentence, two figures appeared out of thin air in front of Noah. Looking at the two figures, Noah raised his eyebrows. One of the newcomers was none other than Zeke Klein. The other person had long black hair, and was dressed flirtatiously in the inner court of the council. Noah remembered that the other party's name was Urusha. Looking at Zeke Klein and Urudia who appeared out of thin air in front of him, Noah frowned inwardly. Under the detection of his outstanding sensing ability, Noah discovered that not only Zeke Klein, but Urudia also seemed to be a little strange. She was completely different from Zeke Klein. If Noah had to put his finger on it, Kieran gave him a strange feeling. It was as if something was very wrong with him. Urudia, on the other hand, gave Noah a strange feeling, as if she was hiding something. With his outstanding sensing ability, Noah could sense these things, but he couldn't go any further. If even Noah's sensing ability couldn't sense anything more, it was enough to prove that Zeke Klein and Urudia weren't simple. Suppressing the suspicion in his heart, Noah looked straight at Zeke Klein and Urudia. What advice do the two esteemed counselors have for me? Don't tell me you're going to condemn me again? Don't be so nervous. Zeke Klein leisurely raised his hand and made a gesture of surrender. I don't mean any harm. We're different from those cowardly fellows, little brother Noah. Urusha smiled charmingly. She didn't do it on purpose, but her every move gave off the vibe of a mature woman. We're here because we want to see what kind of young man can kill the 10 St. Magus Grandmasters. We've met in the court, right? Didn't you see enough back then? Noah curled his lips and smiled. Besides, the one who killed Joseph wasn't me, but my companion, Golden Wolf Bio. Even if you want to see, you should be looking at Bio, right? Such a brash tone, as expected of someone from fairy tale. Urrutia shrugged. Well, although I don't hate it. Don't underestimate yourself, Sir Noah. Zeke Klein looked at Noah with a meaningful gaze. You're different from those old fogies. I feel that to be able to subdue a golden wolf that has the ability to kill one of the 10 great Saint Grand Magi, as its master, your abilities are definitely not simple. As he said this, Kieran bent down and gave Noah a noble salute. I believe we'll have many opportunities to meet in the future. Urrutia also gave a slight salute and showed Noah a beautiful smile. I'll be looking forward to your guidance when the time comes. After leaving these two sentences behind, Zeke Klein and Urrutia's figures blurred and disappeared in a flash. Looking at this scene, Noah's eyes flickered slightly. Although he couldn't tell where these two came from, just like what Zeke Klein and Urrutia said, Noah also felt that his fate with them wouldn't be limited to this. Besides, Noah's intuition told him that the next time they met, they might not be able to chat like this without any tension. Chapter 384. When Noah returned to Fairy Tale, it was almost noon. After 4 to 5 days, Fairy Tale, naturally still hadn't finished rebuilding. What was supposed to be Fairy Tale's guild building was currently empty, except for the walls that had been built around the outside. Even the ground had not been paved yet, and it was still a piece of yellow soil. In such a place, a temporary workplace similar to a bar had been built. Of course, although it was called a workplace, it was just a simple bar and commission board for the guild members to accept missions. In addition to the simple bar and commission board, temporary rough tables and chairs were neatly arranged on the yellow ground. The guild members were sitting there, killing time. After all, Noah had carved all the runes used to build the defense system into the building materials. Now, he only needed to commission the workers to build it. There was no need for the guild members to be involved in the hard work. Fortunately, the sun wasn't too big today. Otherwise, the high mages of Fairy Tale would have been burnt to death if they were exposed to the sun without anything to cover them. However, as long as one was a magic shooter of Fairy Tale, they would not have any complaints about this. After all, to everyone, the existence of the guild was the most important. They already had a strong sense of belonging to the guild. As long as they could stay in Fairy Tale, they would be satisfied. Except for a few people. Noah, who was about to enter, stopped in his tracks when he heard a voice. What's going on? This shabby place? It was an extremely rude and vile voice. Laxas, who was wearing a fur coat as usual, was standing on the yellow ground. He looked around and did not hide his ridicule. I really can't take it anymore. I was actually reduced to this state by a mere phantom lord. Is this still the invincible Fairy Tale? Hearing Laxas's malicious words, the guild members all lowered their heads. They were angry but did not dare to say anything. Therefore, no one noticed that Laxas, whose face was full of ridicule, looked at the yellow ground, the simple bar, and the commission board of the guild. His eyes slightly trembled and flashed with anger. Useless. There are so many of you and you can't even protect a guild. As expected, it is because there are too many weaklings and trash in the guild. If I were the guild leader, I would definitely kick out all those people who only know how to eat. Not a single one would be left. Hearing this, Elusha could not help but stand up and look at Laxas with a stern face. Laxas, what do you mean by this? You still don't understand? Then, let me tell you clearly. No one knew why Laxas was so angry, but it was rare for him to voice out his twisted thoughts in front of the entire guild. It's precisely because there are too many weaklings in this guild, that's why others have no qualms about finding trouble with us. If we were to clear out all the trash here and create the strongest guild, Then how could those rascals have any ideas about fairy tale? Do you know what you are saying? Laxes. Lysana, who was with Mira at the bar, could not help but speak up. Even the number 1 guild in the past, Phantom Lord, had so many magic shooters. Our guild is already considered to have few people, and one of us can beat 10 of them. That is why that kind of guild disbanded, isn't it? Laxes said with a sneer. It is because there are too many trash in there, so many that even the weaklings here can beat 10 of them. That is why that kind of guild is now at the end of its road. Isn't this enough to make you understand that the strong are the ones who dominate everything? If I inherit the guild, then I will definitely clear out all the weaklings here. Perhaps the news of the guild's destruction had really stimulated Laxes. The agitated Laxes pointed at Lysana and growled without hesitation. That's right, it is people like you. Lysana's eyes widened and she lowered her head, her expression becoming gloomy. Laxes. Mira, who had been quietly listening to Laxes, suddenly raised her head and stared at Laxes. Her body flashed with a terrifying magic that made people's hearts tremble. Oh. How long has it been since I last saw you like this? Laxes raised an eyebrow. I thought that after 2 years, you are no different from those trash who only know how to put on an act. I didn't expect you to have such courage. Well, since you still have this level of ability, then I will reluctantly let you stay in the future. Laxes. Elusha could no longer bear it and glared at Laxes. That's too much. Lucy and Lebby bit their lips and tried hard not to show their disgust. Damn it. Gray clenched his fists and his eyes were filled with anger. You bastard. Naz rushed towards Laxes with a blazing flame burning in his hand. Against the sudden rise in temperature, he swung his fist in the direction of Laxes. I must teach you a lesson today. Hearing this, Laxes revealed a look of disdain. Before Naz's fist wrapped in flames was about to hit his body, a bolt of lightning flashed all over his body. He directly turned into a bolt of lightning and disappeared on the spot. Who dash? Naz followed the fist momentum and swung his flaming fist in the air, causing him to lose his balance and almost fall to the ground. Until this moment, a lightning bolt appeared behind Naz. Laxes re-emerged from it with his back facing Naz with a mocking look on his face. However, Laxes didn't notice it. When he just turned into lightning and avoided Naz's attack, a fist swung towards Naz's back as if it was a prophet. Laxes just happened to appear behind Naz, and appeared in front of the fist that was about to strike in advance as if he had foreseen it. Boom! In the next moment, the fist, which was accompanied by a sharp gust of wind, landed heavily on Laxes' face, causing a muffled thud. Goo! Laxes, who was punched heavily in the face, directly spat out a muffled groan. His body was knocked away and hit the table and chair beside him. In a burst of crackling sounds, the table and chair there were smashed into pieces. He also fell into the fragments of the table and chair. The sudden change stunned everyone present. When they saw the full appearance of the fist's owner, many of them revealed a joyful expression. Noah, who appeared behind Naz out of nowhere, waved his hand casually as if he had just swatted a fly. He then turned his back to Naz. This punch is from Mira and Lysana. As soon as the voice sounded, the shattered table and chair were blown away in a burst of lightning, exposing Laxes' figure. Bastard. Laxes, who was wrapped in lightning, looked at Noah furiously. Feeling the pain on his cheek, his expression suddenly became dangerous. You actually dare to attack me? Didn't you say that if you have power, you can do whatever you want? Noah glanced at Laxes. I'm different from a guy like you who treats the weak like dirt. Laxes, I think that the so-called duty of the strong is to protect the weak because the weak exist, the strong have a need to exist. If you only care about power, it's like an object that's too hard and easy to break. You said that if you inherit the guild, you will eliminate all the weak? Noah turned around and looked directly at Laxes. Then, I'll tell you, Laxes, if I inherit the guild, I will never let it become the kind of guild that you dream of. You'd better be prepared. The atmosphere in the air suddenly became oppressive. Chapter 385. Everyone in Fairy Tale was staring at Noah and Raxus, who were confronting each other in the middle of the field. They all subconsciously held their breaths, not daring to even breathe. When Laxus heard Noah's words, his eyes widened, then he slowly lowered his head and raised his hand to cover his forehead. After a while, he suddenly laughed out loud. Ha! Ha ha ha! Ha 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 ha! Looking at Laxus, who suddenly laughed out loud, everyone present looked at each other in dismay. Only Noah stared at Laxus with a calm face, as if he already knew the reason why Laxus suddenly laughed out loud. Good. Good. That's great. This will be interesting. Laxus, who was laughing maniacally, raised his eyes and met Noah's calm gaze. Since you've already said this, then I'll take it as you declaring war on me. Let me see if you have the ability to make me understand. Ha 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 ha. Amidst a burst of excited, impassioned, and battle-ready laughter, Laxus's body bloomed with golden lightning. His body turned into a bolt of lightning and swept into the sky, disappearing from the Fairy Tale Guild. Looking at Laxus, who turned into a bolt of lightning and disappeared into the horizon, the corners of Noah's mouth slowly curled up, a glint flashing across his eyes. Noah knew that after the destruction of Fairy Tale, Laxus's twisted heart had finally reached its limit. Just like when Fairy Tale had just been destroyed, the magic shooters in Fairy Tale were also depressed because of the collapse of their mental support. Laxus was affected in the same way. However, Laxus's influence was much greater than the others. This was because to Laxus, who did not interact much with the others in the guild and was in a state of cold war with his family, the guild was the last thing in his heart. It was the same as his younger brother, Noah, who treated the guild as his home. With the guild destroyed, Laxus suffered a much greater blow than the other members of Fairy Tale. Therefore, from this point of view, Noah and Laxus were indeed brothers. And now, because Noah had destroyed the Phantom Lord, what would Laxus do because of the same thing? Would he magnify his twisted desires because of his anger and directly attack those in the guild who he viewed as weak and trash? This was not impossible. Therefore, Noah did not hesitate to say those words. This was to fight for justice for Mira and Lisanna, and also to shift the target of Laxus's venting onto himself. And because of this, Noah understood. Perhaps, the battle with Raxus that had been dragged on since he was a child could no longer be avoided. Big brother Noah. Lisanna, who came to Noah's side, leaned her head on Noah's chest and reached out to hug Noah tightly, as if looking for someone to rely on. It seemed that the words Laxus had said in his agitation had caused her to feel a little down. Then, was Mira affected in any way? Just as Noah was thinking this, Mira walked over and showed Noah the warmest smile, as if she could see through Noah's thoughts. She lightly shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Seeing this, Noah breathed a sigh of relief and patted Lisanna's back, comforting her softly. Don't take that guy's words to heart. He was just too agitated because the guild was destroyed. If you're still angry, I'll help you punch him a few more times next time. Pfft. Lisanna's tears turned into laughter. She nodded and her expression became relieved. She leaned against Noah and did not leave, snuggling into Noah's embrace and enjoying the warmth of Noah's embrace. Damn it, Laxus, that guy. Naz clenched his fist and shouted. Next time, I'll definitely fight him to the death. He's really getting more and more overboard, Laxus. Gray was speechless. Undoubtedly, he wasn't like this in the past. Why would such a person be the Archmage of Fairy Tale? Lucy asked worriedly. Also, he said that he would inherit the guild. Could it be that he's going to become the leader of Fairy Tale? Isn't that a matter of course? Beside Lucy, Lebby shook her head with a heavy expression. Laxus is the grandson of the leader. If the leader abdicates, then Laxus will most likely inherit the guild. What? Lucy cried out in surprise. How could this be? It's not strange that you don't know about this. Elusha shook her head. Laxus and the leader's relationship has been in a tense state for a long time. People who don't know the situation wouldn't be able to tell that the two of them are family. Then, can that guy really inherit the guild? Lucy's face was full of disgust. I definitely don't want that kind of thing. Don't worry. Luchan. Lebby patted Lucy's shoulder and looked at Noah with hope in her eyes. Noah is also the grandson of the leader. Compared to Lax's, the relationship between the leader and Noah is much better. Moreover, Noah has never disappointed the leader. The leader has always been proud of Noah. If he wants to inherit the guild, the leader will definitely choose Noah. Really? Lucy looked at Noah in surprise and clenched her fist to encourage him. Then Noah, you have to do your best. Don't lose to Lax's. It's too early to talk about this. Noah laughed bitterly. Grandpa is still very healthy, and he won't be willing to part with us children. He won't retire in peace until the day his body collapses. It doesn't matter if it's the leader or Noah, as long as that Lax's doesn't inherit the guild. Lucy puffed up her cheeks. Even if he becomes the guild leader, no one will acknowledge him as someone who doesn't care about his companions. That's right, Noah looked up at the sky and muttered softly. Why can't you understand this logic, Lax's? Hearing Noah's muttering, Mira, Lisanna, Elusha, Lebby, Lucy and the others looked at each other and looked at Noah with a trace of heartache. Noah was in a state where he almost went to war with his own brother and was viewed as a one-sided enemy. In fact, he must be feeling very conflicted. When they thought of this, the girls couldn't help but feel heartache in their hearts and remain silent. At this moment, outside the fairy tale guild, a figure silently appeared. It was a mysterious person who was covered in a thick windbreaker and had his face covered. He wore a hat, revealing only a pair of eyes, and carried a few strange-looking staffs on his back. Staring fixedly at Noah, who was surrounded by a group of young ladies, the mysterious man's eyes were filled with astonishment, surprise, and surprise. More than that, there was a nostalgia that couldn't be erased. Not long after, the mysterious person turned into a phantom and disappeared on the spot. At this moment, Noah seemed to have felt something and turned his head to look in the direction of the mysterious person. His eyes were filled with doubt and confusion. Night came quietly. Opening the door to her house, she tugged at Noah's hand and pulled him in with a helpless look on his face. Big brother Noah. Come in quickly. Why are you so excited? Noah shook his head helplessly. It's not the first time I'm here, do you have to be like this? But you haven't been here for so many years. Lisanna couldn't hide her good mood. My room is completely different from before, I'll take you to see it later. Okay. Noah replied weakly. Behind Noah's back, Mira watched all of this with a smile and walked in. Elfman has work, so he won't be back tonight. You can sleep in his room. Elfman went out to work. Noah paused for a moment before coming to a realization. In that case, wouldn't there be only one man and two women left tonight? Chapter 386. Ever since the fairy tale guild building was destroyed, Noah had no home to return to. No, to be more precise, Noah had no place to stay. This was to be expected. After all, the fairy tale guild was Noah's home. This was not just a matter of belonging, but also a matter of living a normal life. Don't forget, Noah lived in the fairy tale guild. This time, the fairy tale guild was destroyed, and Noah had completely lost his place to live. Until the new guild was completed, he could be considered homeless. Therefore, during this period of time, Noah had been living in the guild that had no roof and was only left with a piece of yellow soil. This was not a big deal. Noah had once cultivated outside for 4 years. Deep in the mountains and forests. Wild mountains and forests. Where had he not lived before? Noah had lived in worse environments than this. Thus, in a way that was equivalent to camping, Noah lived in the guild building that had not yet been completed. This matter, until today, was finally discovered by Mira and Lisanna. Because they had to clean up the table and chairs that Noah had smashed when he punched Lax's, Mira and Lisanna stayed a little longer and went outside to buy new tables and chairs. In the end, Noah, who did not know about this matter, thought that Mira and Lisanna had already returned, and leaned against the wall that had already been completed. He directly sat on the ground and fell asleep. Thus, Mira and Lisanna, who had returned to the guild, smoothly discovered this scene. Unsurprisingly, the two girls violently shook Noah awake, and with an extremely angry expression, they scolded Noah, saying something about not taking care of himself and so on. Then, there was no then. Mira and Lisanna, who could not bear to see Noah sleeping in the wilderness, did not hesitate to drag Noah out of the guild building and bring him back to their home. Helpless, Noah had no choice but to comply. However, Noah did not expect that. Elfman was not at home, leaving only Noah, Mira, and Lisanna in the house. This was not a very good situation. In the past, it wouldn't have mattered. But now that he knew how Mira and Lisanna felt about him, Noah could no longer stay under the same roof as the two beautiful girls. One had to know that the current Mira was as gentle as a saintess. Every action of hers affected Noah's heart. Lisanna had long since made love to Noah. How could Noah remain calm when surrounded by these two girls? If it was only Lisanna or Mira, then Noah wouldn't be like this. But there were two of them at once. If something went wrong and he couldn't control himself, he would be in deep trouble. Noah, who had fully tasted the taste of meat, was not confident that he could be the same as before. He could not guarantee that he could stay in the same dorm as Julie and Lilith. Even when he slept on the same bed, he would not be able to control himself. At that moment, Noah could only suppress his uneasiness. He laughed dryly and said to Mira and Lisanna, "Then I'll sleep in Elfman's room tonight. That's it, good night." With that said, Noah wanted to escape to Elfman's room. However, just as Noah started to move, Lisanna grabbed Noah's hand and forcefully pulled Noah back. "It's still so early." Lisanna's face was full of dissatisfaction. "I still want to show you my room. I'm afraid that after entering your room, I won't be able to bear to come out, girl." If that's the case, Noah bitterly smiled in his heart. "Also, because of the conflict with Laxes, you didn't have time to eat dinner. That won't do." Mira put one hand on her waist and cutely puffed up her cheeks as she scolded. "You have to take good care of your body. Wait here for a moment, I'll go make dinner for you." After saying that, Mira turned and walked into the kitchen. Big brother Noah. When Mira walked into the kitchen, Lisanna hugged Noah tightly and took a deep breath as if she wanted to smell Noah's body scent. Then, she smiled sweetly. "Do you want to take a look at my room?" Feeling Lisanna's beautiful figure and the soft touch of her plump breasts, Noah glanced at Mira, who was humming in the kitchen and cooking something. He let out a sigh of relief and hugged Lisanna, moving his mouth close to her ear and gently blowing into it. "Is it really just taking a look at your room?" Hearing such flirtatious words and feeling the hot breath on her ear, Lisanna blushed and shyly looked up. Her eyes were suddenly wet. "Big brother Noah, if you want to do something else, that's fine too, idiot." Noah's hand caressed Lisanna's soft and slender waist as he gently bit her earlobe. "Then your sister will definitely find out. I'll hold back, and not let big sister Mira find out." Lisanna seemed to miss Noah's embrace very much. She buried her head tightly in Noah's chest and spat out hot words. I haven't showered yet." "Big brother Noah, let's go in together." Without a doubt, Noah's heart was moved. Even Lisanna missed Noah's embrace. As a man, Noah would definitely miss Lisanna's soft and delicate body even more. If possible, Noah really wanted to do the same thing as that night, tightly entwining with the beautiful girl in his arms. Thinking of this, Noah's heart also surged with a trace of warmth. Then, just as the man and woman were about to fall into a state where they couldn't extricate themselves and couldn't leave each other, a faintly smiling voice sounded from the side. "I was wondering why you were suddenly silent. So you were whispering something that others can't hear?" Noah and Lisanna were both startled. They jumped away reflexively and put some distance between them. They looked at the source of the voice and saw Mira looking at her grown children. Mira looked like she was looking at her grown-up children. Me. Mira. Noah awkwardly turned his head away. Hee hee. Lisanna seemed to be a little shy, but her mischievous personality didn't diminish as she teased Noah. The shy big brother Noah is also very cute. What are you talking about? Noah pretended to be angry, causing Lisanna to giggle. She ran to Elfman's room as if she was escaping, leaving only this sentence behind. I'll go help big brother Noah tidy up his room. Looking at the escaping Lisanna, Noah helplessly smiled. Aya. It was only at this moment that Mira stretched out a finger and tapped her smooth chin. Did I disturb you too? Seeing Myra's natural expression, Noah bitterly smiled. Mira, are you also going to tease me? Because. Mira came in front of Noah and looked up at Noah. Her gentle eyes met Noah's gaze, and there were slight ripples in them. Noah only does bad things to Lisanna. This sentence caused Noah's heart to beat faster. This expression, this sentence, it wasn't hard to guess what Mira meant, Mira. Noah couldn't help but reach out his hand to Mira. Myra's eyes rippled at almost the same time. Instead of retreating, she moved forward and snuggled into Noah's embrace. She lifted her chin slightly and closed her eyes. At this time, if Noah still didn't know what to do, then he wouldn't be a man. Noah took Myra's lips as she let out a soft whimper. Chirp. TSK, Mira didn't know if it was because she didn't want to fall behind Lisanna, but she opened her lips and welcomed Noah's tongue into her mouth. She stuck out her sweet little tongue and tangled it with Noah's. After a long while, the two wet lips parted. Just now, you said you wanted to bathe together, right? Mira looked at Noah's face without blinking. Her pretty face was slightly flushed, and her hands were crossed in front of her chest, making her look even more voluptuous than Lisanna's. If Noah wants, I can do it too. Noah couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Ha! Mira tilted her head and looked at Noah with her beautiful eyes. Her red lips moved slightly, and the words that came out of her mouth made Noah's heart waver. Do you want to see? My body. Do you want to see? This could basically be considered as a useless sentence. Even if it was Noah, how could he not want to see? Chapter 387. Noah had always thought that his self-control was very good. After all, since he was a child, Noah had worked hard to learn to control his emotions at any time in order to not let the overly strong magic power go out of control with his emotions. He became extremely good at this aspect. Later, the ability to not lose control when sharing a bed with Julie and Lilith was mostly thanks to this ability that had been cultivated since childhood. But now, Noah found that his ability to control his emotions was really not that great. Because, even if he was good at controlling his emotions, after hearing Myra's words that were enough to make any man lose control, he still couldn't help but feel his heart beating faster, and even his heart was shaken. Do you want to see? Mira, on the other hand, seemed to be doing it on purpose. Her eyes were misty as she repeated the words that made Noah waver. My body. Me. Mira. Seeing that Mira was still trying to show a gentle smile even though her face was blushing, Noah's voice became a little dry. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Hee hee. In this regard, Mira laughed innocently like a prank. Her eyes were fixed on Noah, but her hands were slightly trembling as she put them on the back of her clothes. The next moment, the sound of a zipper was heard. With the sound of cloth friction reverberating, Noah watched the princess dress on Mira slide down from her body, forming a circle with Mira as the center, and fell to the cold ground. Noah only felt that his head had become muddled. Then the princess dress slid down from Mira's body. A large area of snow-white skin was exposed in front of his eyes, making Noah's already messy head even more confused. At this moment, Noah just wanted to exclaim in amazement. Because the scene in front of his eyes was too beautiful. It was a beauty that could not be described as a work of art. The scene in front of Noah's eyes. It was so amazing that people couldn't help but marvel. It was as if the curves were specially carved. Between the curves, it seemed that there was something added on it that could definitely attract people's eyes and hearts, making people unable to look away. Noah believed that if it was someone else, even if it was a woman like Mira, they would definitely be attracted by the beautiful body in front of him. Her skin was not as white as snow, but it was enough to be called as white as pearls. Instead of saying that her figure was curvy, it was more appropriate to say that it was extremely enchanting. Undoubtedly, she was a gentle and kind saintess that made people unable to have the slightest ambiguity. Such an existence. When she stripped the last cover on her body, not only did she not lose the sacred and inviolable sense of holiness, but there was also an additional attraction that could make anyone to go crazy. Unsurprisingly, Noah's attention was captured by Myra's figure, and he was completely absent-minded. Noah really didn't expect that Mira would actually take off all her clothes in front of him and become really naked. And it seemed that even Mira herself didn't believe that she would do such a bold thing. Her pretty face was flushed, and her slender arms were also blocking her chest, covering the holy mound that men yearned for. Her delicate body was also trembling slightly. Mira didn't know that although this could serve as a little cover, it made her charm even easier to make people go crazy. Because that pair of extremely plump and round breasts were not something that Myra's pair of slender arms could block. In addition to being able to cover up that captivating red, it made her even more obvious that pair of great breasts on her body. Noah had always thought that Lasana's figure was already considered good. After all, Lasana's figure was also very plump. But who knew that compared to Mira, it was still a little worse. And this difference lay in that pair of plump breasts. From Noah's point of view, Myra's chest was at least 2 times larger than Lasana's. It was very likely that it was even 3 times larger. It made people's blood boil. Therefore, Noah almost uncontrollably reached out his hand towards that sacred place. Noticing Noah's actions, Myra's delicate body trembled, but her eyes never left Noah's face. Although her pretty face was getting redder and redder, her expression was always extremely gentle, and it was getting more and more intense. It turned out that Mira and Lisana were indeed sisters. Just like how Lisana would feel shy in front of Noah, but she was still unwilling to reject Noah and boldly showed her beauty to Noah. Mira certainly knew the consequences of not rejecting Noah's outstretched hand. She was definitely very shy and timid in her heart, but she still didn't choose to escape. Instead, she slowly let go of the trembling hand that was blocking her chest, revealing that round longing in front of Noah without missing a single bit. Noah, who clearly knew Myra's feelings, was extremely moved. He stroked his hand on that yearning that couldn't be refused as long as it was a man. What entered his hand was a full smoothness, followed by an indescribable softness. Noah was already quite familiar with this kind of softness, but he still couldn't help but be moved at this time. Thus, Noah subconsciously began to gently knead. Myra's pretty face became redder and redder, and her eyes became more and more blurry. She began to pant lightly, exhaling scorching hot breaths. Her delicate body trembled uncontrollably with Noah's actions. She raised her hand without resistance, puffed out her chest, and offered her most beautiful place to Noah for him to play with as he pleased. Unknowingly, the two's bodies began to draw closer, and their heads also moved closer to each other, tasting each other's lips. The sound of panting. The sound of sucking. Their flirtatious voices reverberated under the eaves of the house that was neither too big nor too small. Not long after, even Noah's clothes fell to the ground at some point. In the next second, a suppressed groan of pain rang out in the hall, followed by a series of muffled groans. The man and woman who were immersed in each other's embrace had long forgotten. They weren't the only ones under the eaves. Sigh. In Elfman's room, Lisanna leaned against the door, listening to the sound of panting and the crisp sounds of collisions from outside the door. She sighed unhappily. Even big sister Mira has become that bad guy's thing? Looks like us sisters can only take advantage of that bad guy. Lisanna sighed faintly, and even started to sulk. Damn big brother Noah, he's such a playboy. Forget about big sister Mira, but if he wants to find another woman from who knows where, he'll have to get through me first. Otherwise, this night was especially long. It wasn't only for the man and woman who were immersed in each other's embrace, but also for the woman who was directly entangled in the hall. It was the same for the girl who could only hide in the room and listen to the sounds that constantly tortured her nerves. Everyone. The next day, when Mira returned to the bar counter of Fairy Tale, she had transformed back into the gentle signboard girl. Her face was glowing as she enthusiastically waved at everyone in the guild. Work. Do your best. Oh. The magic shooters, who were planning to accept the commission and join the team to rebuild the guild, cheered excitedly under the cheerful support of the popular masked girl, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. No one knew that the famous masked girl and signature girl of Fairy Tale, who still seemed to belong to everyone, had in fact become the possession of only one person last night without anyone knowing. If they knew, the male archmages who were enthusiastically responding to Myra's greetings wouldn't be as excited as they were now. Instead, they would even have thoughts of committing suicide. Sitting next to Noah, Lebby, who was asking Noah about runic script, asked curiously. It feels like Myra's mood is a lot better than before. Did something good happen? Is that so? Noah laughed dryly. Something good should have happened, right? But, Mira is very gentle. To Mira, everyone's good news is her good news. That's why she's always in a good mood. Today, she's even better than before, Rebby said with a puzzled expression. I've only seen Mira this happy once when you came back. Could it be that it has something to do with you this time? Noah was speechless. Chapter 388. It had to be said that a woman's intuition was truly terrifying. Even though it was only a guess, Lebby had guessed the reason why Mira was in such a good mood. Not only is Mira in a good mood, but she has also become prettier. Lebby tilted her head and looked at Mira suspiciously before shifting her gaze in another direction. Compared to Mira, that person's mood seems to be the exact opposite. She seems to be in a much worse mood than before. Hearing this, Noah followed Lebby's gaze and the corner of his eyes twitched. He saw Lisanna, who was holding a tray and delivering drinks to her companions who were rebuilding the guild. Not only did she not have her usual cute smile, but she also seemed to be in a bad mood. She would occasionally turn her gaze in Myra's direction and faintly sigh. When she turned her gaze to Noah, she would immediately turn her head away in a huff. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that she was throwing a tantrum. Lebby, who saw this scene, glanced at Noah mockingly. It seems that this person's bad mood has something to do with you. You really have it hard. Noah rolled his eyes at Lebby, but he couldn't find the words to refute her. Who asked Noah to be so distracted by Mira last night that he forgot about Lisanna's existence? When he thought of how he had fallen asleep on the dining table in the hall last night with Mira in his arms and woke up in the same position in the morning, the first thing he saw was Lisanna's resentful expression and eyes, as well as the faintly visible dark circles under her eyes. Noah couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Come to think of it, last night was indeed ridiculous. In the presence of a third party, and this person was also his girlfriend who had an intimate relationship with him. Not only did he spend an entire night with someone else's sister in someone else's house, but when he woke up, the first thing he saw was that he was hugging someone else's sister and lying naked in front of her. No matter how one looked at it, this seemed like a situation that would lead to bloodshed, right? Although it didn't cause any bloodshed in the end, Noah felt rather awkward after being stared at by Mira the entire morning with a blissful expression and Lisanna the entire morning with a hateful gaze. Lebby seemed to have more or less guessed something. That was why she was making fun of Noah. Embarrassed, Noah could only change the topic. By the way, why don't I see Alusha, Naz, Gray, Lucy, and Hubby? You mean them? Lebby's attention was successfully diverted. She raised her spirits and laughed. I heard that they just formed a team. They should be working together now, right? They've formed a team? Noah asked in surprise. Naz and Gray? And Alusha? Noah couldn't help but be surprised. This combination was really strange. Naz and Gray were sworn enemies. They would fight every other day, and the quarrel never stopped. Just like Mira and Alusha in the past, it was also like their magic. Ice and fire were incompatible. For these two people to form a team together, it was not an ordinary kind of strange thing. Needless to say, Alusha, Naz and Gray were afraid of Alusha since they were young. For them, forming a team with Alusha shouldn't be better than forming a team with a gorilla, right? And Lujin is also in that team. Lebby sighed. I know why you're surprised, but Alusha, Naz, Gray, and Lujin have been working together recently, so they just formed a team. Now that you mention it, it seems to be true. Noah scratched his cheek. Well, this is also a good thing. I hope those people can get along well. Get along well? Lebby pondered for a moment, and in the next second, she immediately shook her head with sweat all over her forehead. No, absolutely impossible. Ha! Noah couldn't help but laugh. This strange combination, it was most likely impossible for them to get along well. They would definitely quarrel once every 2 or 3 days, right? However, that was also Alusha, Naz, and Gray's style. It would definitely be very pleasant. As for Lucy, Noah wasn't very familiar with her, but he felt that this girl was also an existence full of infinite possibilities. If she joined Alusha, Naz, and Gray, it should also have some kind of catalytic effect and create different sparks, right? At least, Noah believed so. Noah and Lebby, who were chatting happily, didn't notice that around them, several pairs of eyes had been staring at them fiercely, full of resentment, dissatisfaction, and indignation. Is it Lebby this time? Lisanna shouted angrily. Big brother Noah is really a playboy. Well, Mira comforted Lisanna with a smile. Although the atmosphere seems to be good, Lisanna should be able to tell that Noah and Lebby don't have that kind of feeling, right? Not now doesn't mean that they won't in the future. Lisanna retorted. It's not hard to cultivate feelings, especially for big brother Noah. That's true. Mira smiled bitterly, looking at Noah with an extremely gentle gaze. We are well aware of how attractive that man is. Isn't that so? Lisanna puffed out her cheeks and looked in another direction. Jet and Troy are also having a hard time. Mira followed her line of sight and saw Jet and Troy hiding in a corner, staring at Noah and Lebby who were chatting with each other. Tears flowed down their cheeks as they bit on a handkerchief in their hands. Mira couldn't help but smile. I can't watch this anymore. Lisanna couldn't take it anymore and jumped out. Big sister Mira and I are here already. Big brother Noah, you definitely won't be able to touch Lebby. With that said, Lisanna was about to walk in the direction of Noah, but her head suddenly felt a little dizzy. Feeling her vision blur, Lisanna let out a strange cry. Then, an indescribable drowsiness rushed into her mind. It wasn't just Lisanna. Even Mira felt a little sleepy all of a sudden. She held her head and leaned on the bar counter. Noah, who was talking to Lebby, raised his head as if he sensed something and furrowed his brows. Is this a sleeping spell? That's right. Someone was using a spell that could cause people to fall into a deep sleep. This was because Noah could feel that the air of the entire fairy tale guild was filled with a magical power, causing waves of undulations, causing those who were affected by this invisible undulation to feel sleepy. What's wrong? Seeing Noah's furrowed brows, Lebby only had time to say this before her eyelids began to close. In the entire fairy tale, except for Noah, everyone was affected by the sleeping magic. Furthermore, seeing that no one was able to escape the effects of the spell, the sleeping spell wasn't just any ordinary spell. The person casting the sleeping spell was definitely not an ordinary person. If not for the fact that he didn't sense any malicious intent, Noah would have acted long ago. Of course, the reason he didn't act wasn't just because Noah didn't sense any malicious intent. It was also because the magical energy that permeated the entire guild seemed to have intentionally bypassed Noah. In other words, Noah wasn't among the targets of the sleeping spell. This feeling. In the direction of the bar, Mira seemed to know what was going on and revealed a relieved expression. She hugged Lisanna as she lay on the bar and fell into a deep sleep. Mr. Gang. Lebby seemed to know who the sleeping spell was as well. After saying this name, her eyelids closed and she fell towards Noah's direction. Noah instinctively hugged the upside-down Lebby and glanced at Mira and Lisanna, who were sleeping soundly at the bar. He then looked around. He saw that everyone in the guild had fallen to the ground and had fallen into a deep sleep. Noah furrowed his brows as he looked in the direction of the guild gate with narrowed eyes. It's time to come out, right? As soon as he said this, a gust of wind blew in the direction of the entrance. Not long after, a figure silently appeared there. The newcomer was wearing a windbreaker and was dressed strangely. On his back were a few strangely shaped staffs, and he wore a hat and a mask. Noah, with his senses fully activated, found that he couldn't detect any magical energy from the newcomer and couldn't help but become cautious. You're tuning in to the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.